kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Today, your information is more exposed than ever. When you shop, sign in, or browse, you could be vulnerable to cybercriminals. More online threats demand more protection. That's why new Norton 360 provides multiple layers of protection, combining device security, secure VPN, password manager, and cloud backup all in one solution. Get new Norton 360, starting at $24.99 for the first year.
Christmas is almost here, and at Asda, we've got your favourite spirits for just £16 each. That's £16 for a 1 litre bottle of Smirnoff vodka or Gordon's gin, or a 70 centilitre bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey. Looks like you're hosting this year. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability. Exclude Scotland. Drink aware.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Far wing. Elevates. Triple bucket.
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut
to the
it.
Sideline, the man leads for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Pump fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right block.
NBA today to start listening.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Broadcasting live from from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, can Obamacare survive if people aren't required to have health insurance? My colleague June Grasso joins us to talk through the future of the ACA. But first, let's get a market check with Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much, David Weston. We are looking at records again today. Right now, the S&P is trading at 3201, up 10 points. That's a gain of 0.3%. S&P pushing past 3,200 for the first time, led by consumer and communication shares. The benchmark's up more than 7% in the fourth quarter and more than 27% so far this year. Fresh batch of data showing jobless claims fell, but not as much as forecast, doing little to alter views about the health of the economy. The Dow up 92 points. That's a gain of 0.3%. Again, the S&P up 0.3 as well. NASDAQ is up 44 points, higher by 0.5%. Existing home sales dropped to a 5-month low in November. And with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
The data illustrate a nagging problem. Lean inventories continue to stymie demand fueled by low mortgage rates. The number of listed properties nationwide dropped by more than 7% in November to 1.6 million, a record low for the month. The median sales price, in turn, is up from a year earlier. It's running at $271,000. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
Robinhood Financial has agreed to pay $1.25 million as a penalty to a brokerage industry regulator for failing to ensure that its customers receive best prices for securities orders. Gold up 0.4%, $14.80 the ounce right now, while West Texas Intermediate crude $61.25 a barrel, up 0.5%. Brent also higher by 0.5%. Brent crude now at $66.49 a barrel. Recapping, U.S. equities at records. S&P up 11, a gain of 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power with David Weston continues. And once again, here he is, David Weston.
Thanks very much, Charlie Pellet. A series of legal challenges to the Affordable Care Act are working their way up to the Supreme Court, with the latest decision coming from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. To take us through the court's decision, we welcome now my colleague June Grasso and Professor Timothy Jost of Washington Lee Law School. Professor, welcome. Start us out by just explaining exactly what did the Fifth Circuit decide?
Well, what the Fifth Circuit did was to partially reverse and remand and partially affirm a decision that was made by a federal district court, Judge O'Connor in Texas, at the end of last year. And what they held was that they agreed with him that the individual mandate is now unconstitutional, since the tax that people used to have to pay for if they didn't have insurance has now been zeroed out. But Judge O'Connor, the lower court judge, had held that once the individual mandate was gone, the entire ACA, all 900 and some pages of it, should disappear. And the Court of Appeals said, well, not so fast. I think you have to look at each section of it and decide whether it really is dependent on the individual mandate or not. And so they sent it back down to the district court judge to reconsider. In the meantime, a group of states led by California Democratic attorneys general who had appealed the case are considering whether they will go directly to the Supreme Court to try to get a once and for all judgment that that at least that the rest of the Affordable Care Act is constitutional and still in place.
Well, and that's the key question, I take it, Professor, because the first time the Supreme Court considered this, they saved it, as it were, by calling it a tax and said that's the constitutional authority, because they said a lot of things about the Commerce Clause. So if, in fact, there isn't the tax, what can be left constitutionally of the Affordable Care Act?
Well, everything, except for the individual mandate, and that tax has been gone since the first of this year. And obviously, all the remaining provisions of the Affordable Care Act have just continued to hum right along. And so I think it's perfectly obvious that the Affordable Care Act was not dependent on that tax. It's still there. The decision of the district court is pretty nonsensical.
Well, when we spoke a while ago, Tim, right after the opinion came out of the federal judge, I remarked, and I think you agreed, that scholars on both sides, both conservative and liberal scholars, were saying that the decision was really an outlier. So what happened to lead the Fifth Circuit to take this position?
Well, you hate to accuse courts of being political, but frankly, the two judges who decided the case yesterday, the majority, were both Republican appointees, one a Trump appointee, and they, in fact, showed, I think, considerable skepticism about the lower court's approach, but they were not quite prepared to throw it out. There was a dissent from a Democratic appointee, Judge King, and she just really went to town on them for not just deciding the case and putting it finally to bed for once and for good, that the rest of the Affordable Care Act is constitutional. I mean, she also said that the shared responsibility payment requirement continues to be constitutional as well, but that really doesn't matter at all anymore because there's no longer a tax there. It doesn't matter whether people want to buy insurance or not.
So let me ask you about one sentence in the judge's opinion. In the majority opinion, the two judges wrote, "But it is no small thing for unelected, life-tenured judges to declare duly enacted legislation passed by the elected representatives of the American people unconstitutional." So if they said that, where did their opinion come out? Why did their opinion come out the way it did?
Well, they said that, and they said other things like that. I mean, I think, again, as I said, they really seemed skeptical about Judge O'Connor's decision that the whole statute should be invalidated. On the other hand, they also said that it's a difficult question to decide, basically, what Congress would have wanted had it not had the Affordable Care Act, and with not the individual mandate, and will the statute work fine without it? So they kind of went both directions on that and said, we're going to send it back and let you think through it one more time. Although they also, I think, indicated pretty clearly that some sections of the statute just have absolutely nothing to do with the individual mandate. Now, Judge O'Connor, the district court judge, is a pretty hardcore ideologue. He's held all kinds of statutes unconstitutional or regulations, so it's not necessarily going to be safe in his hands.
If, in fact, the Democrat attorneys general succeed and take this up to the Supreme Court on this round, do they run a risk that, in fact, they decide the Commerce Clause question they didn't decide last time? Because, as I recall, the Chief Justice wrote, and he wrote a fair amount of dictum that indicated he was not very happy with using the Commerce Clause to support the act overall, but he could get around that at the end by saying, well, it's a tax. It's not really a Commerce Clause. Do they run the risk that, okay, now the Supreme Court can get and will get at the Commerce Clause question?
Well, I mean, the judge did, Chief Justice did at least offer the opinion that the statute was not constitutional under the Commerce Clause, that Congress can't require people to buy health insurance. But then he said what the statute essentially does is it gives you a choice. You either buy insurance or pay a tax, and that's fine. We have lots of statutes that give you the choice to either engage in certain behavior or pay a tax. And so he upheld it on that basis, and the dissent in this case, in the Fifth Circuit case, says, well, you still have that choice. You can either buy health insurance or you can pay the tax, except the tax is now zero, so it's a pretty easy choice for people who don't want health insurance. And I think that if the case goes back to the Supreme Court, the court may very well say the same thing all over again and may agree with the dissent that you have the same choice. The choice has just gotten easier.
Because you have Justice Kennedy did not vote in favor of the Affordable Care Act, so it doesn't. The additional change of Justice Kavanaugh wouldn't make a difference.
In the meantime, the administration is on the other side, right? The administration doesn't.
They've
like
been on so many sides and have taken so many positions in this.
Okay, thanks very much to Law Professor Timothy Jost of Washington and Lee Law School, and also to my colleague June Grasso. We're waiting now for the details of the so-called Phase 1 trade agreement between the United States and China, but will it alter the rivalry between the two countries? We talk with Professor Graham Allison of Harvard's Kennedy School. That's coming up next on Balance of Power, and we are on Bloomberg Radio.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city in the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Today, your information is more exposed than ever. When you shop, sign in, or browse, you could be vulnerable to cybercriminals. More online threats demand more protection. That's why new Norton 360 provides multiple layers of protection, combining device security, secure VPN, password manager, and cloud backup all in one solution. Get new Norton 360, starting at $24.99 for the first year.
Christmas, a time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Slam dunk! The NBA is on TuneIn Premium. Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. 4 of the league's top teams are in action as the Lakers take on the Bucks at 8 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Rockets taking on the Clippers at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. 11-2! Today, the Lakers are at the Bucks at 8 p.m. Eastern, and the Rockets are at the Clippers, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Back to throw, fires right on the slant. Caught, touchdown! leaps, and he surges in. Touchdown.
This Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the lights shine bright on the Las Vegas Bowl. Washington Huskies head coach Chris Peterson will coach his final game before retiring as he takes on his former school, the Boise State Broncos.
Down to the 5, he leaps for the end zone, and he is in.
To listen to this and every bowl game, just search college football today.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn. With 2020 on the horizon, TuneIn continues looking back at the stories that shaped the 2010s.
In 2012, Black Lives Matter is born after the killing of an unarmed 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. In 2015, the European refugee crisis sees an unprecedented number of asylum seekers entering the EU after fleeing conflict regions like Syria. And in 2017, the Me Too movement inspires a new wave of social justice.
Search news on TuneIn to be listening when the next decade's big headlines break.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Another day of records on Wall Street. This update brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, designed an innovation and economic prosperity university for its economic engagement. More at njit.edu. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ are all rallying. S&P up 12, now a gain of 0.4% at 3203. NASDAQ up 48, up 0.5, and the Dow higher by 107 points, up 0.4%. 10-year up 4/32 at yield, now 1.90%. Gold up 0.3%, 14.80 the ounce, and crude West Texas Intermediate up 0.4%, 61.19 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. Balance of Power continues, and once again, here's your host, David Weston.
Thanks so much to Charlie Pellet. Live from the Interactive Brokers Studio, this is Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. The trade dispute between the United States and China affects businesses and markets and economies day by day. And the latest from the Trump administration is that we're very close to a trade deal on the first phase of the dispute. And this is what we heard from Secretary Mnuchin recently on CNBC.
I'm very confident. So it's just going through what I would consider to be a technical legal scrub. And we'll be releasing the document and signing it in the beginning of January.
But the present-day trade dispute with China is only part of a larger story of what happens when an emerging world power overtakes what has been the dominant power, something Professor Graham Allison has written about in his book, Destined for War, Can America and China Escape the Thucydides Trap? Welcome, Professor Allison, now back to Bloomberg. So, Professor Allison, thank you so much for joining us. So let's start with the particulars and then go to the general. What do you make of the reports of this initial agreement on Phase 1? And what does it tell us, if anything, about the overall rivalry between these great powers?
Well, thank you very much, and happy to be with you. I just came from China actually last night, so my impression is that the Phase 1 trade deal is done, but the Phase 1 trade deal was also done before Chile, and then, lo and behold, an accident occurred, the meeting didn't occur, and therefore it wasn't signed. So I would say there's still a little bit of risk in the fact that finding a place and time for Trump and Xi to meet, because they're only going to do the deal, I think, if they can declare that only the two of them could have done it. But I suspect they'll do that in January. I would make that, 90% plus. So I think that's going to happen. I think the question is, how significant is that? And I've been fascinated by the extent to which markets and people watching markets have taken the trade dispute as a kind of a bright, shiny object that they react to. I think this is one of the 25 most important dimensions in the rivalry between the U.S. and China currently, in which I think actually the impact on the supply chains, and particularly critical elements in the supply chains, and the tech side of this
will be ultimately more important than trade component. And then there are lots of things that are more important than that. But in any case, I think as to the particular of the trade agreement, I think we'll see in January the phase one trade agreement. And I would not be surprised. I'd make it, I don't know, 50-50, maybe, that in the period between January and the November election, particularly if President Trump concludes that it would be an advantage to him in the campaign, that we could have a second phase agreement in what could, over time, be a series of agreements, since trade is a subject that goes on forever.
You make a really important, fascinating point to me, at least, which is what we've heard thus far. The phase one agreement largely is what I would characterize as sort of old trade. That is, trade in goods and services, agricultural products, things like that. It isn't a like 21st century arrangement having to do with intellectual property and digital and artificial intelligence, things like that. If you look at the tensions as they develop between these two powers, as China overtakes the United States, in all likelihood and fairly soon, that may be much more difficult to come to terms with, because that goes to the essence of their future and our future.
I think you're precisely correct. I think virtually all economists agree, and most financial types, that the bilateral trade deficit is not a big item. And in any case, it's a very small item. If you think in terms of, before the Trump conflict over trade, the deficit with China was $450 billion. $450 billion is what percentage of U.S. GDP? Minuscule. So how? And if one wants to change that bilateral balance, I have urged the Chinese. I said to them, they should just say, okay, how about zero? Because all they need to do is shift the purchases of soybeans and oil from other sources to source it out of the U.S. You could zero out the trade balance without any particular conflict. So I think this is a relatively small item, and as you say, it's about old economy. About new economy is the question of, for example, advanced semiconductors, which the U.S. has been the key supplier of to China, and which, by having first challenged and cut off, or at least announced we were cutting off, and then given extensions that didn't cut off, ones, I think, had the worst of both worlds. On the one hand, one made Chinese uncertain about the sourcing, and so therefore you can be sure that what they're doing today is making sure that for every crucial ingredient, every crucial element in the supply chain, they're going to try to be self-sufficient. But then one's also not imposed the proposed draconian penalty, in which case companies like Qualcomm have been doing extremely well because China is buying even more of the advanced semiconductors in the meantime.
Professor Allison, there are those, not a few of them, who say that really where we're headed toward with China is a decoupling, or even sort of a tech Cold War, something like that. As you've looked back through history, because you did that for your book, Destined for War, are there instances where this conflict between a rising power and a present-day number one power get resolved by them just sort of separating to some extent from one another?
Well, unfortunately, there are a couple of such examples, and they didn't turn out very well. One of the interesting ones is the relationship between the U.S. and Japan in the 1930s and 1940s, where Japan was the rising power in Asia, and the U.S. a dominant power with an open door policy in Asia in the 30s. The Japanese became to be aggressive, moved into parts of China and other parts of Southeast Asia. The U.S. resisted. Initially, we had tariffs. Then we had basically almost a decoupling. Ultimately, in the late 1930s and 1940, we imposed an oil embargo. And the Japanese having concluded that was going to strangle them, decided to basically take a chance and attacked at Pearl Harbor. So that one didn't turn out to be a very successful.
Not a very good example. That's exactly right. Okay. Many thanks to Professor Graham Allison of the Kennedy School. He is the author of Destined for War. Great to have that historical perspective. And now it's time for the perspective of what's coming next with Bloomberg Business Week from Jason Kelly.
All right. Well, we've got a big show, big Thursday shows. We march toward the holidays. David Weston. We're going to talk a little bit with Josh Green. This is sort of into your world about the impeachment trial, what it may mean for the Democratic side, especially ahead of this big debate that we're looking forward to this evening. We're also going to talk about Me Too in the context of Wall Street. Hasn't really resonated yet, but there may be a reckoning coming.
Oh, really? Because people have been waiting for that. People are saying, where was Wall Street in all this?
It's a good story.
Stories.
Very provocative story by Katja Borchkansky. She's going to be along.
That's fascinating. That sounds like a terrific work. We're going to look forward to on Bloomberg Business Week. That is, of course, with Jason Kelly and Carol Massar. That does it for Balance of Power for today.
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
At Lidl, we're big on all those Christmas parties this season to be jolly. With our deluxe king prawn selection for only $3.29, and our deluxe mature cheddar soufflets also just $3.29. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Cutting for the net. Scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
And live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio, welcome to Bloomberg Business Week for this Thursday, December 19th, 2019. I'm Carol Massar, along with my co-host Jason Kelly. Mexican Central Bank cutting its overnight rate to 7.25%, just passing the Bloomberg.
Absolutely. We'll look into that if there's any market reaction for sure. Speaking of market reaction, stocks at a record here in the United States. Impeachment, apparently. The market keeps going up.
Yep. Investors have added more than $5 trillion
dollars to valuations this year, and still it continues to churn higher. All right, we're going to talk about that and so much more. First up, though, a Bloomberg Business Flash with Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much. Happy Thursday to you both. Here's where we stand. S&P now at 3203, crossing that big round number today for the first time with the S&P up 12 right now. That's a gain of 0.4%, being led higher by consumer and communication shares. The benchmark, by the way, up more than 7% in the fourth quarter, and so far this year, the S&P 500 index up 27.79%. The Dow up 98 points, up 0.4% right now. NASDAQ moving higher, up by 0.5%. 10 years up 4/32, yield 1.90%. We've got gold up 0.4%, $14.81 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.4%, $61.18 a barrel. So again, recapping, stocks pushing higher, trading at records. S&P up 12, up 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. We'll continue to keep an eye on the market as it appears to grind higher as we count you down toward the close at 4 p.m. today. In the meantime, a lot of drama down in Washington around impeachment. What effect might it have on the Democratic side of the ledger, and who might the winners be, at least in the short term, especially in Iowa?
I can guess that a lot of people haven't thought about the consequences of this. So
but Josh Green has.
Josh Green has. It's a great story. It's in the magazine, so we'll get to that in just a moment. Also in the magazine, Me Too coming to Wall Street. Well,
kind of.
Yeah, not really. The day of reckoning has yet to come.
Yeah, Katja Porchikansky and Max Abelson, they have a very provocative piece in the magazine this week. Katja is going to be along to tell us a little bit more about that. And speaking of politics, big debate tonight in the City of Angels.
And it's the smallest gathering, really, on one stage so far this year. So we are going to head to Los Angeles, check in with our own Kevin Cirilli. We'll get to that in just a moment.
All right. This portion of Bloomberg Business Week brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, designated an Innovation and Economic Prosperity University for its economic engagement. More at njit.edu.
All right, let's set the Business Week agenda. Joe Weisenthal is with us, markets editor at Bloomberg News, co-host of What'd You Miss? Find that at 4 p.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg Television. Dave Wilson is with us, stocks editor at Bloomberg News, both in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. One thing that everybody needs to know about today, Joe.
Yeah, you said it. Stocks up. I mean, we even had data this morning that wasn't particularly amazing. Initial jobless claims coming in a little bit higher than expected, though down from the week before. We got a Philly Fed reading, which wasn't that bad, but it wasn't that great. But stocks are going up. So that's what counts.
Makes
That's
sense
what
to
matters.
you?
Scoreboard.
What do you guys talk about in the newsroom about that? Like, I mean, valuations higher and higher and higher, and yet more money continues to be plowed out. And we had guests yesterday saying, hey, and there's a lot of money on the on the sidelines of investors who took money out of equity funds and put it into bond funds.
You know, there's a lot of noise, and there's been a lot of noise for 10 years. You know what story I was just rereading from a couple of days ago? Lou Wang had a great piece about the last decade.
I love that story.
And how not only was it incredible from an absolute return standpoint, but volatility, so sort of returns divided by volatility, the Sharpe ratio, incredibly low.
Mm-hmm.
So what or the Sharpe ratio being high. So basically, in other words, we see this example of it's just never paid really to hedge your worry. And you look at the situation right now, and, you know, inflation is benign, Fed's on the sidelines, federal government running massive deficits, so pumping a lot of money directly into the economy. And the conditions could have said that last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and they've been pretty consistently bullish for stocks.
And so, Dave, you may have another thing you want to talk about, but I'm going to ask you about this sort of round number effect and how much that plays into market sentiment. I mean, is that just a thing that we in the media tend to look at, or do investors actually think about those sorts of things?
Well, probably more that we think about it, but I was thinking about it anyway, so that's what I was going to talk about. First time the Dow Jones, that's another story. S&P 500 is above 3,200. You know, that's just 5 weeks after close above 3,100. You go back to July at top 3,000. So you're talking about the third milestone this year, like we had 3 milestones last year and 4 the year before that. But the number that really, thinking about the Dow 30,000 is not that far away. It would take less than a 6% gain to get there. Wow. Now, that's the kind of number that might get more people's attention than just, the 100-point moves in the S&P 500. Nonetheless, it just kind of tells you, I mean, especially with what we've seen the last few years, how consistently the index, specifically the S&P, has gone through one milestone level after another. It's just indicative of the strength of this market.
Despite folks saying, okay, it's getting more expensive, it's getting more expensive. And
the economy is going to go down the tubes and whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, speaking of the economy, the one thing I'm watching, there's a story on the Bloomberg. Emily Barrett wrote it, and she just points out that the U.S. Treasury yield curve reached its steepest point, in over a year today, amid an improving growth outlook that's really boosted investors' inflation expectations in recent weeks. What a change from where we were, that haven trade in August that really drove the curve into an inversion. So, which is, we all get a little crazy, inverted yield curve, because, what we do.
Is that what people do about an inverted yield? They get a little crazy.
Sometimes they do, because they get worried that that's going to mean we're headed for a recession. So I just think, what a few months. I think back to Peter Coy's story. 3 months ago or so, we thought the world was coming undone. And now here we are. We're like another record in the S&P, as Dave just pointed out.
Yeah, I'm looking at a story we're going to talk about in just a few minutes, which is this Wall Street Me Too story, because by Katya and Max.
Yeah.
We talked with Max about it for our weekend show. You can catch that starting tomorrow evening on Bloomberg Television and Radio. But, reading it over again in preparation to talk to Katya, it's so fascinating. And David Weston, I sort of, caught him up short a little bit as we were teasing this show, in the sense of it really is remarkable that everything we've seen in the entertainment world, everything we've seen more broadly in corporate America, you think about McDonald's and some of the other things that have happened at companies, hasn't really manifested itself. But it did at BlackRock finally, and so you wonder if that's the turn.
Yeah, I do. We'll see. There's a big reason why the Me Too movement has been kind of slow to envelop Wall Street, and it all has to do with arbitration agreements for the most part. So we'll talk about that coming up.
All right, let's do the Bloomberg Markets Bite of the Day. Joe Weisenthal, Dave, thank you so much. Dave, we'll see you a little bit later on. Joe, you're headed off to do some TV. What'd you miss? Coming up at 4 p.m. Wall Street time. The Bloomberg Markets Bite of the Day. It's one number that tells us a lot. Carol, today's number, $26 million.
Yeah, 8-year-old Ryan Cagey of YouTube's Ryan's World, who has built a business empire reviewing toys, earned an estimated $26 million, according to Forbes. Wait a minute, he's 8 years old.
He's 8 years old.
$26 million. There's your number. This is according to Forbes, based on pre-tax figures from June of 2018 to June of 2019. So it's a year. Ryan is the highest paid YouTube star in the world. He started hosting the Toys Review unboxing videos in 2015, which has grown into a mega popular brand called Ryan's World. Its YouTube channel has 23 million subscribers. I remember reading about him when he started doing this. And
I have to say that number blows me away. And I shouldn't say the number blows me away, because I do think there are people who are making money on YouTube. My kids talk a lot about YouTubers and how much money they make and all the kind of ecosystem around it.
There's
Pets.
Yeah, Scout, that would be a great YouTube star. But
Scouts World
or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's phenomenal. $26 million.
For an 8-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
But think about it. Other kids watch it.
Sure.
And then they say to their parents, oh my God,
I want that
this
toy. And so, the real money comes from the toy makers wanting to be on that show.
I'd love to know how much is sponsored, or I'd love to know the arrangements with all of that and how it all works, right?
Let's look into
it. All right, we'll get on it. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, we are going to cover the markets. We're going to talk about that great story by Josh Green. We'll get to that in just a moment. In the meantime,
let's get down to Washington. Martin DeCaro is there with world and national headlines. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Jason. President Trump and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell are blasting the process that led to the third impeachment of a president in U.S. history. Trump took to Twitter to attack Democrats again, McConnell to the Senate floor.
There's only one outcome that is suited to the paucity of evidence: the failed inquiry, the slapdash case.
McConnell wishes to quickly acquit Trump in a Senate trial. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is delaying sending the articles of impeachment over to the Senate.
The next thing for us will be when we see the process that is set forth in the Senate, then we'll know the number of managers that we may have to go forward and who we would choose.
Meantime, Russian President Vladimir Putin gave Trump a vote of confidence at his annual news conference in Moscow today, saying the charges against Trump are far-fetched. The House is expected to approve the compromise changes to the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Free Trade Pact today. The NAFTA rewrite, a key legislative priority of President Trump's. Pumped up by his landslide election win, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson set out his agenda in Parliament in what he described as the most radical program of lawmaking in a generation.
This is not a programme for 1 year or one Parliament. It is a blueprint for the future of Britain. Just imagine.
In addition to completing Britain's exit from the EU, Johnson wants record-high funding for the national health system, revamping the immigration system, doubling funding for scientific research, and attacking climate change, among other priorities. Global news 24 hours a day on air in a quick take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Martin DeCaro. This is Bloomberg.
Financial leaders enjoy talking with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell.
What was it like having the giant darken the door every once in a while?
Experts appreciate it when what they have to say is understood.
Do you think that we might have seen a cyclical peak in the labour market?
It's the same reason we're recommending Bloomberg Surveillance to you.
Everything you thought would happen is happening.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Open calendar. What's my schedule looking like?
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an emergency flash flood between Park and First Street.
What? No, that doesn't work. I'm busy then. Decline. Decline.
Floods don't exactly work around your schedule. Disasters don't plan ahead. But you can. It starts with talking to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. So don't wait. Communicate. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
It's Lidl's Pick of the Week. This week we're big on Christmas veggies, with Brussels sprouts, carrots, red cabbage, parsnips and shallots from just 15p from Thursday the 19th of December. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes NI.
On the goal line, scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
Sean McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown. touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
In Washington, D.C., there's only one word in everybody's mouth: impeachment. As the impeachment process moves on to the next stage, don't miss history unfolding on TuneIn. Wherever you are when the latest witness takes the stand, you can listen to every hearing live as it's happening on Capitol Hill. And between hearings, turn to stations like CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News Talk for bombshells, breaking headlines, and bold analysis every step of the way. Search Impeachment News on TuneIn to hear the latest.
Spend Christmas Day listening to the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Featuring 5 big matchups on the holiday schedule. Unwrap the action starting at 12 Eastern when the Celtics take on the Raptors in Toronto, followed by the Bucks and the 76ers at 2:30. The holiday cheers continue with the Rockets and Warriors at 5 and the Clippers and Lakers at 8. And a showdown between the Pelicans and Nuggets at 10:30. 'Tis the season with the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business
From
Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelota. Another day of records on Wall Street with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all advancing. S&P up 13, right now at 3204, up 0.4%. S&P pushing past 3,200 for the first time. Technology, consumer, and communication shares leading the way higher. NASDAQ is up 50. That's a gain of 0.6%. The Dow up 110, up by 0.4%. 10 years up 330 seconds, yield 1.90%. We've got gold up 0.4%, $14.80 the ounce, and crude oil West Texas Intermediate up 0.4%, $61.20 a barrel. Recapping stocks at a record, S&P up 13, up 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
So the upcoming impeachment trial, it could very well turn out to be President Trump's Christmas gift to presidential hopeful Joe Biden. Josh Green is national correspondent at Bloomberg Business Week. His story in the magazine hitting newsstands today at Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg terminal. Josh joining us on the phone from Washington, D.C. You know, I really do think, Josh, I love the way you think. You think like nobody else. Who would have thought that this trial, what the implications are for some of these Democratic presidential hopefuls. Tell us about what you wrote about.
Yeah, well, the irony of the impeachment saga as it pertains to Democrats is that Trump was impeached because he was trying to dig up dirt on the guy he presumed would be his toughest opponent, Joe Biden, and was hoping to take him down a peg or disqualify him. But as it turns out, if you look at the polls throughout this year, Biden has been the front runner and remains the front runner. And now as we look ahead to early 2020 to January with the beginning of the Senate's impeachment trial, the effect that's going to have on the Democratic race is that it's going to force 5 of the Democratic contenders, all senators, including 2 of the front runners, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, to spend the critical weeks before the Iowa caucuses sitting on Capitol Hill, while Joe Biden will find himself with the advantage of being able to campaign in Iowa.
And as you point out in your piece, Josh, which is so smart, is that, and it's not just them, but people who really have maybe even more on the line in terms of the very existence of their campaign, people like Senator Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen this year is every time there's a big news event, whether it's Ukraine or the Mueller report, the trade war, you name it, it has the effect of essentially freezing in place the Democratic field. The people who are front-runners remain front-runners. The people who are lagging behind stay there. Well, the 6 weeks between now and Iowa are especially important for candidates who have lately been gaining momentum. And the one who stands out to me is Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, who's from a neighboring state in Iowa, who is a moderate, who has a real kind of Midwestern charisma that lately polls show have been connecting with Iowa voters. Unfortunately for Klobuchar, she is going to have to spend at least a couple of weeks in January, sitting in a Senate hearing room, listening to a trial whose outcome is basically foreordained. Trump isn't going to get removed, while the people that she's running against, or a number of the people she's running against, are going to be back in Iowa trying to close the deal with voters she would much rather be talking to.
Yeah, it's just kind of ironic how this all plays out. I do wonder, too, about, in general, when we look at the impeachment proceedings and as they move along, what has this meant in terms of President Trump and his popularity overall among the American public?
Well, as with everything Trump, what it's done is intensely polarized the American people. If you look at Democrats and Democratic voters, more than 90% agree with Trump's impeachment. Flip it around, look at Republicans, more than 90% of them disagree. So in terms of the Democratic primary coming up, it's only a factor insofar as it removes half the Democratic field from Iowa where they'd like to be. How it plays out in the broader general election, I guess we really can't know yet. But on the other hand, we kind of can know. And it's going to divide the country basically in half, just like everything else Trump does. Always a possibility something strange comes out. But I'd have to imagine, even in that sense, if there is something unusual in the Senate trial, where we're going to end up is the same place we started, with America split 50-50.
Hey, Josh, does it change the thinking at all, though, that I think there were some saying that each of these candidates are going to maybe win, one of the early primaries? It was going to kind of be split between everybody, that nobody was going to have a clear majority. And I do wonder, based on your story, does that change kind of the thinking around that?
It's hard to know. I mean, I would say from the vantage point of right now, today, it doesn't change, because if you look at Iowa and if you look at the early Democratic states generally, there are a cluster of frontrunners, four in particular: Biden, Buttigieg, Sanders, and Warren. Right now, Iowa polls have Buttigieg on top, but if you pull back, Bernie Sanders is also doing well. Joe Biden is winning overall. Warren has stopped her fall and begun to recover a little bit. So we really can't know. And of course, so much is going to change or could change depending on the outcome in Iowa, who wins, who has momentum, and how voters react from there.
Josh, I go back to so much of the work you've done leading up to this, even back to the 2016 election, and your understanding and your explanations through your book, Devil's Bargain, largely about Steve Bannon, that Trump base. What have you learned, if anything, about that base through this impeachment process?
Well, I've learned that they are completely loyal to Trump. I mean, Trump, said at the outset when I spoke to him just after he wrapped up the nomination in May of 2016, he said, "I'm going to put my stamp on the Republican Party. It's going to become the party of Trump." Lo and behold, that is precisely what it has become, the party of Trump. There's no room for dissenters. People who wanted dissent have left. You saw it in the outcome of the House vote, not a single Republican defection. And not only that, we now have a Democrat in Jeff Van Drew defecting over to the Republican side. So what I have seen is that Trump has consolidated his hold on Republican voters. Hasn't done a lot with independents, and that's why he isn't a lock for re-election. But as far as Republicans go, Trump owns the Republican Party.
Hey, just 25 seconds here. So if Trump is the Republican Party, what is the Democratic Party?
Unclear. I mean, that's what makes this whole thing so interesting. I mean, you have clear splits, in terms of age, Buttigieg and Biden. In terms of politics, you have liberals and centrists. We don't know. It's not clear voters know. They could differ between states. We may well not know until the Democratic convention in July. It really could go that far, who Democrats are going to wind up picking.
All right. Great to catch up with you. Josh Green, national correspondent for Bloomberg Businessweek. His piece, check it out, in the latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week may make you think about impeachment in a different way. And we should point out Mike Bloomberg, founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, Bloomberg News' parent, as well as the parent, Bloomberg Radio, is seeking the Democratic presidential nomination.
All right, coming up, we have our weekly series taking a look at the world of health and medicine. And coming up, we'll take a look at global pandemics. That's next on Bloomberg Business Week. You're listening to Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks are modestly higher. The market is getting back on track after a slight stumble in yesterday's session. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 109. The S&P 500 up 13. The Nasdaq Composite is up 48. Unemployment line shrank last week. The government says first-time jobless claims fell by 18,000, the most since February, to 234,000. Analysts, however, were expecting an even bigger decline of 225,000. 8 years after buying Esurance, Allstate is preparing to phase out the brand next year. Instead, it will sell insurance online under its main brand in an effort to compete more effectively with rivals Geico and Progressive. Apple is looking for big names to boost its new Apple TV Plus service. The Wall Street Journal reports Apple has been exploring deals for college sports rights with the Pac-12 and even the James Bond franchise. The talks were called preliminary. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council. What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Ho, ho, ho. Want to make Santa's job a whole lot easier this year? TuneIn Premium is the gift your loved ones can enjoy all year long. Featuring commercial-free news from MSNBC, Fox News Talk, and CNBC.
Global concerns about climate change not
the most generous state in the U.S. on GoFundMe is...
Plus, commercial-free music and live sports. TuneIn Premium brings the best in audio to you. Forget the stocking and stuff their phone with TuneIn Premium. Happy holidays. Search Premium to start your free trial.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade.
Don't believe me, just watch.
The 2010s saw the rise of the viral hit when meme-ready tracks like Gangnam Style,
Oppan Gangnam Style,
The Harlem Shake,
Do the Harlem Shake,
What Does the Fox Say?
What Does the Fox Say?
And of course, Old Town Road snowballed from internet oddities to global phenomenons.
I got the horses in the bag. Horse stock is attached.
Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
With 2020 on the horizon, TuneIn continues looking back at the stories that shaped the 2010s.
In 2012, Black Lives Matter is born after the killing of an unarmed 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. In 2015, the European refugee crisis sees an unprecedented number of asylum seekers entering the EU after fleeing conflict regions like Syria. And in 2017, the Me Too movement inspires a new wave of social justice.
Search news on TuneIn to be listening when the next decade's big headlines break.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Along the goal line, Martin scores! It takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
A move, and a shot, they score!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Casting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
And coming up, we're going to check in with our friends down at Johns Hopkins, talking about the intersection of business and health when it comes to global pandemics, something we don't think as much about, but probably should based on this research.
Yep, they're on the rise. And what are the implications of that? So we'll get to that in just a moment. In the meantime, back to your top business stories and a look at the trading day. Here is Charlie Pellet.
Thank you very much. We're trading at or near the highs of the day right now with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all claiming fresh records. S&P 500 index pushing past 3,200 for the first time, led by tech, consumer, and communication shares. S&P up 14 right now at 3205. That's a gain of 0.5%. NASDAQ up 52, higher by 0.6, and the Dow up 127 points, up by 0.5%. The 10-year up 3/30 seconds, yield right now 1.90%. Now, as for the outlook for 2020, Robert Tipp is Chief Investment Officer at PGIM.
People are looking at, this should be a good year. It's probably going to be this, probably, stable rates, better equities, tighter spreads. But you're going to kind of pogo stick between the extremes of fear and greed as the backdrop has subtle shifts.
Darden restaurant shares, they're tumbling now by 4.9%, down the most in about 3 months after reporting quarterly sales at Olive Garden that trailed analyst expectations as chains battle to draw customers who are increasingly reluctant to eat out. Live Nation Entertainment shares up almost 10%. CNBC says Live Nation will announce a settlement with the Department of Justice over the agency's investigation into Live Nation and Ticketmaster practices. Once again, shares of Live Nation, they're up now by 9.7%. Gold up 0.3%, $14.79 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.5%, $61.22 a barrel. So again, recapping, the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all climbing to records. S&P up 14, up 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, let's head down to Baltimore. Dr. Tom Inglesby joins us there on the phone. He is the director of the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security at the Bloomberg School of Public Health. And we should point out the Bloomberg School of Public Health, supported by Mike Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Dr. Inglesby, thanks so much for joining Carol and myself.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
All right, so help us understand the whole notion of global pandemics. To start, what are we talking about? Because it feels like that's a word that is scary to most people, but let's define some terms here.
Yeah, a pandemic is a disease outbreak or an epidemic that has spread around the world.
Absolutely. Trump is
So it
someone
could be
who
something
we very rarely
relatively
see in a
mild.
defensive
Every year we have influenza that spreads around the
going on
world, and you could
offense.
call
And I
that
think that's what we
kind
saw
of a very, very
really
mild
clearly last
pandemic.
night when he
We
was
could
at a
also see in
campaign
the
rally,
future
even as the gavel was falling
pandemics of
on the
diseases which
impeachment
have
vote.
a much higher impact on people, could sicken more people, could kill more people.
Yeah, I mean, this is certainly something that definitely not in the headlines, right? Until it becomes a major headline, all of a sudden we're all over it and trying to figure out the implications of it. But talk to us about like kind of where we're seeing this happen. Is it all around the world? Is it?
Rally
I
where
think we always make
Democrats,
the assumption,
Dr.
Inglesby, that it's developing the developing world, and that until it hits the developed world, do we all get concerned? But tell me a little bit about geographically where it's all happening.
Well, a couple examples of that. So back about 10 years ago, we saw a new outbreak of influenza called 2009 H1N1 flu, and that spread around the world. It started in the Americas, it was in Mexico, the United States, and then seemed to spread around the world quite efficiently. And then more recently, we had the Zika virus, which started in South America and also spread efficiently around the world to more than 100 countries. So it kind of depends on the virus, depends on the disease, but I think the whole world needs to be better prepared for it and have things in place.
Well, let's talk about what we need to do to prepare, because I'm assuming that the assumption is we're going to see more, whether it's Zika or something to the like, we're going to see that happening more frequently, correct? Is that the assumption? All right, so what do we need to do to be prepared?
Well, I think especially this audience on this radio show, businesses have a major role to play in preparing for and responding to global pandemics. So we need to do things like stockpile medicines and vaccines in places where they could be distributed quickly, send medical supplies or be able to send medical supplies around the world, finance response in a crisis, and travel and trade have to be preserved when things are going wrong. And those are all things that the private sector really controls and drives. And so countries are going to need to work very closely with global business to prepare for responding to epidemics in the future, pandemics in the future.
And so what does that look like from a business? I mean, I just think about the logistics of a business, especially a global business that's sending people, as you say, sort of all over the world. What's the responsibility here in some ways, not just to employees, but to customers? We're at a time where it feels like, rightly, much more is being expected of companies beyond just, keeping their shareholders and employees happy.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we had a big pandemic exercise in New York back about 6 weeks ago called Event 201, and we tried to tease through the kinds of responsibilities of big business, how they compare to the responsibilities of countries. And so we had businesses like Marriott, Johnson & Johnson, ANZ Bank, Lufthansa, UPS. And what we saw in this exercise was that governments alone can't manage a big pandemic on their own. Businesses alone certainly can't do it. But there needs to be a partnership between the two. And part of that would be corporate responsibility. But part of that is businesses saying what they need from governments ahead of time. If you want us to be delivering medicines and vaccines in a crisis, we need to know what your planning expectations are, governments. So it is a dialogue. It's common planning between countries and business, which is going to be a crucial partner. So dialogue, but then you got to have the systems in place. So are we moving forward on that? Yes, I think there's much more discussion of it. There is more planning around that. There's a lot that needs to be done. But it does seem like there are many global business leaders who recognize the risk to business from pandemics and who see the role that they need to play and that they want to play in developing systems to respond. And individuals, what's the best thing we can be doing? I mean, we get flu shots and whatnot, but are there other things that we should be doing and thinking about? Well, one thing is just to make sure that your elected officials know that you care about things like this. This is one of the problems. It's kind of a problem of the commons. Individuals can't make medicines and vaccines on their own. They have to kind of rely on the scientific expertise of their countries and the companies that make these products. So kind of expressing your interest in being a prepared country, in working with the scientific community to develop these things, that's important. And then kind of knowing your local preparedness plans. What's your health department going to do in your state? Right. What does your community do if there is a crisis where you need to rely on each other? Those kinds of things, I think, are kind of high priorities for people who want to get involved.
Good stuff. A lot of food for thought. Thank you so much, Dr. Tom Inglesby, Director of the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security at the Bloomberg School of Public Health. Joined us on the phone from Baltimore, and the Bloomberg School of Public Health, of course, supported by Mike Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP, Bloomberg Philanthropies, parent of Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about Me Too and its impact or lack thereof on the financial community. It doesn't seem like it's taken off like we've seen in the entertainment or the news industries. So we're going to get into that in just a moment. In the meantime, back to World and National News headlines. Back over to Martin DeCaro in our 99.1 newsroom in the nation's capital. Hi, Martin.
Hello, Carol. As Democrats and Republicans, the House and Senate continue to fight over the looming impeachment trial of President Donald Trump, other business is getting done today. The Senate voted to advance a $1.4 trillion government spending package, a final vote set for later today. It's part of a final burst of bipartisan legislating before the holidays. It contains spending increases for both sides that'll add roughly $400 billion to the deficit over 10 years. That's why Republican Senator Mike Braun of Indiana tells Bloomberg he's going to vote against it.
It needs to be across the board. Politically, we can't ask them to cut domestic if we're not willing to constrain defense. And we're spending too much everywhere, and you need the political will to talk about it.
The White House announced President Trump will sign that bill before Friday's deadline. The House is expected to vote final approval for the new North American free trade deal today. That would send the USMCA over to the Senate. People on both sides of the political aisle say President Trump should apologize for insulting Michigan Congresswoman Debbie Dingell and her late husband John during his campaign rally last night. Trump sarcastically suggested the late lawmaker is looking up from hell at his wife who voted to impeach him. White House spokesman Stephanie Grisham was asked on ABC's Good Morning America if an apology is coming.
You'd have to talk to the president about that. He was at a political rally. He has been under attack and under impeachment attack for the last few months, and then just under attack politically for the last 2.5 years. I think that, as we all know, the president is a counterpuncher.
John Dingell died earlier this year after about 60 years in the House. Global news 24 hours a day on air, and a quick take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Martin DeCaro.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Thank you for an amazing 2019.
What a year. We brought you every major sports game live and on demand.
Touchdown! Got it! And it's gone! Score!
Top stories, commercial-free from the voices you trust.
What was already an important week just got that much more interesting.
And the biggest hits from rock, country, pop, and everything in between.
Baby, how you feeling?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for choosing TuneIn.
Cheers to 2020.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man leads for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Pump fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right block.
NBA Today to start listening.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade. The 2010s saw yet another revolution in the way we listen to music. With music fans giving up CDs and digital downloads for streaming services and internet radio like TuneIn. At the same time, vinyl sales continue to rise to levels not seen since the format's original decline. Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Do you have a favorite true crime podcast this year? Here's a few of ours. On the latest season of Uncover, journalist Michelle Shepard investigates the unsolved case of a missing Toronto teen that has haunted her for 20 years.
Toronto police are continuing a desperate search for a missing...
And on Haunting Warhead, host Damon Fairless exposes the darkest, most shocking corners of the internet and the criminals who lurk in the shadows.
How do you take down a criminal network hidden in the shadows?
Search True Crime on TuneIn to discover these and more life thrillers.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
In the stock market and in life, everything can change from 1 minute to the next. Be the first to hear the latest money news and market trends with CNBC on TuneIn. Wherever your day takes you, listen to CNBC's full slate of programming, including shows like Fast Money, Squawk Box, and Mad Money with Jim Cramer. And when the next big business story breaks, CNBC lets you know with live updates and commentary. At the office, at home, or on the go. Search CNBC on TuneIn to listen.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Live Nation Entertainment has settled claims that have violated terms aimed at protecting competition in live music promotion and ticketing when regulators approved its purchase of Ticketmaster in 2010. Right now, we have got shares of Live Nation Entertainment. They are surging by 8.8%. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all hitting records today in a risk-on rally. S&P up 13. That's a gain of 0.4% at 3205. First time, by the way, above 3,200. The Dow up 130 points, up 0.5%. NASDAQ up 53. That's a gain of 0.6%. Your 10-year up 2/32 with a yield of 1.90%. We've got gold up 0.3%, $14.80 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude oil up 0.5%, $61.22 a barrel. So again, recapping, U.S. stocks trading at records. S&P 500 index higher now by 14 points, up 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week.
Within the sound of silence.
So we want to talk talk a little bit about Me Too and how it's impacted the financial community. The silence meeting, it feels like it hasn't quite impacted the community like Wall Street specifically, like we've seen in other industries, whether it's entertainment, the news industry, and more.
Well, I would take silence in yet another way, which is that a lot of the complaints have been silenced by the system, and that's what makes this story so complicated in a lot of ways.
Well done. Yeah, that's exactly it. In the finance section of the magazine, and it's on newsstands, online, and on the Bloomberg, Katja Porsikansky is investing reporter at Bloomberg News. She writes about how Wall Street still does not get it when it comes to Me Too. She joins us in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. Katja, it is a great story. Jason and I have been talking about it a lot this week because it is kind of staggering why Me Too hasn't had the same of impact that it has on some other industries.
That's right. I think, when the Me Too movement took off, we figured it was only a matter of time before the financial industry was shaken by it as well. I mean, we know that the problems that exist in other industries certainly exist in this one. Maybe even more so. We have a very male-dominated industry, and and we would hear stories, but there was a reluctance to get them out by the women themselves for a number of reasons. And we thought, we need to take a step back. And I think this year we've seen a lot of stories that kind of either took that step back and examined what the cultural infrastructure is that keeps women quiet, or in the case of other stories, we finally had some leaks, as you would call them, from the industry, such as from Lloyd's of London and of course the whole Ken Fisher saga. So it's been it's been a year of reflection and also a kind of assessment.
Well, and a year of discovery, I think, through your reporting, where we've come to learn that there is a system that does effectively silence people, and specifically around arbitration.
Exactly. So it's, you could even say it starts even long before that. Yeah. Because first you have the culture of fear that prevent women from even saying anything at all, because they think they're going to have a target on their back for the rest of their career. Then even if they want to come forward to HR, a lot of women are dissuaded by HR, HR department from pursuing their claim, told this is going to ruin your career, or not giving them, not giving them the support that they need in that situation. And then you have the next step, which is, okay, so you've gotten past HR, now you filed a complaint, and now you're forced into arbitration, because most of Wall Street has these binding arbitration agreements that basically place you in arbitration even over a case of harassment, which has nothing to do with, let's say a squabble over a deal.
I got to ask you, because we've seen the technology industry walk away from those arbitration agreements. I am curious, when you guys do the reporting, and I know you point how the kind of the HR and the company machine kind of kicks into gear when you want to do reporting, but I do wonder what's the response you get when you ask them, because I'm assuming that you have, say, well, why don't you get rid of these arbitration agreements? Because it does really tie an individual, and in particular a woman's hands, from fighting back.
That's a great question. First, I think in the tech industry, you had the employees themselves walking out, and a lot of pressure from them. And, I guess at the end of the day, we have a different cut of people on Wall Street that aren't willing to throw they're not willing to do that. And you have obviously a really male-dominated industry, though the tech industry is obviously very male-dominated as well.
But that's a big part of it, that the women have not been able to get to this top tier.
Exactly. And then you have the counter-argument from Wall Street is just, listen, this is a cheaper, more effective system. It's faster. Not everything needs to be litigated in court. Some of these things are just workplace issues. It could potentially cheaper for the woman too. And actually, you know what? Some women prefer to be in arbitration because they don't want their, it's not that that's their dirty laundry, but they don't necessarily want the details of these potentially horrific things that happen to them out in the public.
Right.
That, as we discussed, it can and will follow her around her career, and she may not want that.
But do women win those arbitration cases? Like, what's the statistics on this? And within the financial community, that when you've got a woman who brings a case like this and it goes to arbitration, how often, is it found out that it works out in her favor?
So The Intercept did a analysis of arbitration, sexual harassment cases in FINRA arbitration, and because FINRA has its own arbitration branch, and found that of about 100 cases of sexual harassment complaints, only 17 women had won them. And when you look at the panels in FINRA, they're mostly male, they're mostly white. So you're not having your jury of your peers that you might have in a courtroom. And the judgments that you get in FINRA or in the other arbitration settings are often very small, as opposed to what you could get from court.
And so, Katya, it felt like we did have at least a couple moments, a couple cracks here in 2019, the back half of 2019, really. One, you mentioned Ken Fisher. That's an ongoing saga to some extent. Feels like there's more to come on that story. But talk a little bit about what happened at BlackRock, where you had two very senior executives dismissed by Larry Fink, and now there's some reporting by Bloomberg and others that says Larry Fink essentially said in the last year or so, listen, top 20 guys, and most of them are guys at BlackRock, clean up or you're out. And now they're out. Is this an important moment? What do we take from this?
That's actually something that we've been debating a lot about. Fisher as well, I think, is a question mark of whether or not this is an important moment that he got in trouble at all. Yeah. Right? And then he got in trouble, but then and pension funds pulled $4 billion, but he still manages well over $100 billion. Yeah. So is that really punishment? I don't know. So yes, you can you also know that we all know BlackRock has a big emphasis on corporate governance, and they expect a lot of the companies that they invest in, so they probably expect a lot from themselves. Yeah. And it's part of their image, and it's important that they have this image. They're also a publicly traded company. Maybe that has part of it. Wall Street, we do have a lot of publicly traded banks, but we also have a ton of private companies, hedge funds and private equity
Somebody's got to care enough, and to me, it's got to start at the top with the CEO to say this is unacceptable. Exactly. We cannot, this cannot continue.
It also has to go, and you alluded to this with the Fisher saga, to the source of money. If people stop giving them money, they will change their behavior, presumably.
Right. But why does it have to come to that? Why can't people just do it right from the beginning?
Because I guess on Wall Street, you vote with your, wallet. Yeah. That's what, So
these are economic creatures.
That's what they respond best to, right?
Yeah.
That's what they know.
Well, it's a really important story, and we know that
there's
while this
right,
was...
and then there's doing wrong.
That's
I don't
true.
know. I learned that when
Absolutely.
I was 5, 7,
Not everyone's
8.
as good as you.
No, I'm not great. I'm just saying there's right and there's wrong.
Katya Porchkansky, you are great. Thank you so much. Terrific story in Bloomberg Business Week this week. Much more to come here on Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg Radio.
Just because you travel doesn't mean you can't keep your routine. The more obstacles travel puts between us and our well-being, the more we strive to work well. At Westin Hotels and Resorts, we're focused on empowering your well-being. With Westin meetings, you work and feel your best with nutritious snacks and nourishing smoothies that give you the energy you need to power through any meeting. Don't leave your well-being behind. We give you the choice to get up or to rise. Search Westin online to find out more. Westin, let's rise.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can fill your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We hunt in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Millions of people are missing out by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB offers interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. Plus, you can stop your friends and family missing out by recommending the Plus account to them. And when they switch, you'll both earn £75. Search online or visit your local branch. Terms and conditions apply.
Come here, sister. Papa's in the swing.
I'm your daughter. What you cooking?
Albert Badlet potatoes. I'm doing the jerk.
Very appropriate.
I'm doing the fly.
Doing the monkey?
The mashed potatoes.
Jump back, Jack. I'll handle that.
See you later, alligator.
Hey, back here and get the roast on.
Grab a brand new recyclable bag today and do the Albert Bartlett.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on this Thursday. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing at or near the best level of the day. Stocks claiming fresh records as investors chase gains that have added more than $5 trillion to valuations this year. S&P 500 index pushing past 3,200 for the first time, led by technology, consumer, and communication shares. The benchmark, by the way, up more than 7% in the fourth quarter and 27.83% so far this year. Here's where we stand. S&P up 13, now at 32. A gain today of 0.4%. The Dow up 124 points, also up 0.4%. A NASDAQ up 51. That's a gain of 0.6%. As for the U.S. economic backdrop, Mike Wilson is chief U.S. equity strategist at Morgan Stanley.
I'm skeptical that the U.S. economy was really suffering from trade as much as people say it was. I do think the global economy has suffered quite a bit, which is why we're more bullish on the global economy on this trade deal and also global stock markets, because they actually were held back. I think the U.S. economy is in the midst of a profits recession. It's very clear now. It's very broad. And the jobs data this morning is another sign of that, potentially.
Indeed, jobless claims fell by 18,000 to 234,000. Cirrus Logic shares, they're pushing higher after a report in the information said Facebook held talks to acquire the semiconductor company earlier this year. Cirrus Logic, ticker CRUS, up now by 3.14%. Live Nation Entertainment has settled U.S. claims that it violated terms aimed at protecting competition in live music promotion and ticketing when regulators approved its purchase of Ticketmaster in 2010. Shares of Live Nation, they're up now by 9.4%. 10-year up 2/30 seconds, yield 1.90%. Gold up 0.3%. Crude up by 0.5%. So again, recapping here, the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all climbing to records. S&P 500 index up 13 to a record 3204, up 0.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's do a little Business Week economics now. The team here in the studio, Kathleen Hayes, Global Economics and Policy Editor for Bloomberg, and Carl Riccadonna, Chief U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics. Kathleen, I want to start with you. What are we seeing in the world of bonds today?
Well, we're seeing a bond market that is not doing a heck of a lot. You just have to say pretty much flat on the the 10 years up. It's at 1.90. It's up 16th. The 30-year bond, again, pretty much flat at 2.34%. Carl can jump a little bit more into the numbers. Weakness in the Philly Fed overstated, according to our U.S. team. Some look at jobless claims. A couple of the interesting things today, of course, is that the Bank of Sweden ended, I'm sure you guys have been talking about this, its sub-zero experiment, rates below zero. This was widely expected. Inflation isn't at target. It's been close to target. There's some political pressure in Sweden. Why Sweden? Why do we care? It's one of the world's oldest central banks, and I think because it's one that was quick to go to negative rates. It's held them there. Their economy's done well. They've recovered. They seem to manage things pretty well. So the negative rate experiment, you kind of get it. Yeah, but I know another thing. And Carl, I'd like to hear what you think. People say, "Oh, well, we need to know how to get out. If you go into negative rates, they're going to make their way out, and we're going to see how it works and if it works." It seems to me the Swedes are showing it's pretty easy. You raise your rate, you're not zero anymore, and you go from there. Do you have a thought on Sweden?
I think that this is the first shot in the revolution against negative rates in central banking. Sweden realized that this is not effective, and a wide chorus of critics in Sweden was raising the call that they should move away from a policy which was a mistake, is a mistake in Denmark, is a mistake in Japan, in Europe, and will not be considered as viable monetary policy here in the U.S. So they acknowledged the mistake. They moved away from that. Not that their economy is going guns a-blazing at the moment,
right.
But they realized that negative interest rates clog up the plumbing and block the transmission mechanism of accommodative monetary policy into the broader economy because they cripple the banking sector.
I hope he's right. That is Carl Riccadonna, because I think it's going to be a long time before some of these central banks admit that it was a mistake, even though I think you're right. How much impact did they have? And there was a lot of pushback. And that's right, the banks, particularly in Japan. But I don't know. Knowing how central bankers move, it may be a while before we hear those words.
There may be room for optimism because Christine Lagarde at her first meeting was talking about a comprehensive policy review. And so perhaps part of that review process will be listening to the Northern Europeans who are screaming in agony over negative interest rate policy, and they'll see the example of Sweden undoing that and doing just fine, and maybe consider whether that could be one of the arrows in the quiver that helps solve the problems for the European banking sector.
I'm so curious about Madame Lagarde and seeing how she runs all of this and what new policy or what she does. Hey, let's talk a little bit about the day's economic news. Anything that we need to know as investors?
Well, we're seeing
jobless claims,
lots of so here's jobless claims, yes. There was a big spike last week.
Yeah.
There was a big spike last week, almost 50,000, and then it came mostly back this week. What's happening here is just a statistical fluke related to the late date of Thanksgiving. And so the last time Thanksgiving was as late as it was this year, was like, I think, 2013, you saw the same profile in jobless claims. So a lot of people took a gasp when they saw that back up, and really they should just be writing that off. And that same fluke helps to explain the weakness we saw in retail sales last Friday. Because, again, the holiday shopping season starts the day after Thanksgiving, and when Thanksgiving comes late, then you don't have a whole lot of November shopping days to work with. And so that distorted the retail sales numbers as well, which led some people to consider whether they should be marking down GDP for the quarter. We're already looking for a weak quarter, but we were not willing to mark it down on those November data points because it should, November was weak, there should be payback in December. Not a ton of payback, but enough to keep us on a trajectory of about 1.7% growth for the quarter.
Okay.
All right, so Kathleen, just a smooth glide economically, you think, into the balance of the year here?
Well,
what should we worry about?
Left,
is that a luge reference? Or?
No, Jason, we're going to get a recession tomorrow. I think we're going to. Well, but I think you're right. The point is, right now.
I'm sorry. Do you remember last year?
I do. I don't remember last year. Do you guys remember last year? December?
Last year on Christmas Eve, what did the Dow, what did the S&P drop?
That's true. It was a little nutty. Well, I don't think we're going to have that.
A little nutty.
Look at that. Mom, Dad, make them take it back. We're not going to have that, Jason. We're not going to have that. We're going to smoothly end the year and go smoothly into next year. However, we are going to get, it's interesting because the Bank of Japan met in the last 24 hours, and there was a lot of conjecture. They didn't really change anything, but there's just this little hint of optimism, right? And when you talk about moving away from negative rates, the fiscal thing's huge for Japan next year. We're going to see how much the trade war does for domestic economies and global economies. I think it's going to be very interesting to see if there is a little bit of pickup from all of this, or if we find that there's entrenched kind of negative forces and things aren't going to do that much because, there are a lot of people arguing that the scope is there for a better 2020 economically than we had in 2019.
What do you think?
And they're optimistic that they can raise the sales tax and not throw the economy into recession?
Oh, you're talking about Japan. I was talking about the world.
In Japan.
But that's why they're doing $121 billion worth of fiscal stimulus. You didn't see that?
To offset the mistake of raising taxes in a fragile economy. They've done it umpteen times before, and with a disastrous outcome, but maybe this time is different.
I think it is, and that's why they did the fiscal stimulus.
Be wary when you hear an economist say maybe this time is different.
I think that's why they're spending all that money.
Exactly. No, the fiscal stimulus is an offset to
it's very big.
Is counterproductive to what they're trying to accomplish with the tax increase in the first place.
Well, they're just wedded. Go to the Ministry of Finance and tell them they're the ones who want the balanced budget. Anyway,
It's going to be smooth till the end of the year.
All
so
smooth.
Enjoy all the way through the 31st, and then back to the luge. But maybe something good happens.
Maybe. We'll see. All right, Kathleen Hayes.
Important data point tomorrow with personal income and spending, because there is this big question mark over consumers.
Those are November numbers, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
I like it when Carl comes in and he's a little mischievous. He's got that twinkle in his eye, that little pre-holiday twinkle.
Little elf on a shelf.
Carl Riccadonna, Chief U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics. Kathleen Hayes, Global Economics and Policy Editor for Bloomberg. Let's get down to Washington. Martin DeCaro is there with World and National Headlines. Hey, Martin.
Hello, Jason. The focus in Washington today shifting to the Senate, but it's not clear when the House will send over the 2 articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump so a trial can begin. On Capitol Hill, Bloomberg's Irv Chapman.
Speaker Nancy Pelosi is delaying sending the articles of impeachment and appointing House members to make the case, but she did not suggest at her news conference that she's doing it to gain leverage in negotiating Senate procedures.
When we see the process that is set forth in the Senate, then we'll know the number of managers and who we would choose.
Senate Democratic leader Schumer is waiting to negotiate with Republican leader McConnell on how the Senate trial will be organized. On Capitol Hill, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Senate Democrats want to call witnesses with direct knowledge of President Trump's pressure campaign on Ukraine. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced new sanctions against Iran. The U.S. will ban visas for current or former Iranian officials whom he says are complicit or responsible for the abuse and detention of peaceful protesters.
Thugs killing people's children will not be allowed to send their own children to study in the United States of America.
The visa ban extending to family members. Human rights groups estimate more than 300 people have been killed, 4,000 injured, 7,000 detained since popular unrest erupted last month. Federal safety investigators are looking at 4 automakers whose vehicles have a potentially deadly exploding type of Takata airbag inflator, but have yet to recall them. Audi, Toyota, Honda, Mitsubishi. The feds say Takata didn't provide details on the affected makes, models, or model years with the defective inflators. Global news 24 hours a day on air in a quick take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Martin DeCaro. This is Bloomberg.
1858, the first transatlantic cable brings news of Europe.
We have the US tariffs on European goods. Would you be standing ready to buy UK domestic stocks now?
It works for 3 weeks. Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
You are expecting an end of uncertainty.
It works every time.
What are you looking for in the event of a deal? There are a confluence of factors.
Weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative, and that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast.
How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team?
Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Are you in for the independent bookseller who found you that first edition? For the baker who brings the smell of freshly baked breads to your door?
And for the barista who never needs to ask your name?
We've all got a part to play.
Every little tap keeps your high street alive
and helps your communities thrive.
So if you love where you live, shop small.
Shopping on your local high street can make a big difference. Shop small. Only by American Express.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket!
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man bleeds for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA today to start listening.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
What was your favorite podcast of 2019? Well, here's ours.
This is the Open Ears Project, a new daily podcast in which people tell us a story about the piece of classical music that means the most to them.
Part mixtape, part sonic love letter. The Open Ears Project is where people share a classical track that gives a glimpse into their lives and allows us to hear the music and each other differently.
Brought to life things that I couldn't really put into words.
Search Open Ears Project on TuneIn to check it out. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all moving higher, trading close to records. Let's head right over to the First Word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. Like you said, U.S. stocks grinding higher today with the Dow currently up 114 points. S&P's gained 12, while NASDAQ climbs by 49. The U.S. 10 yield at 1.91%. Gold is trading higher by 4. Small caps rise 7, and 8 of the main 11 S&P sectors are also trading higher, led by gains in real estate and consumer staples. Only financials, energy, and utilities fell. Nasdaq biotechs rise 18 points. Transports climb 20. Semis jump 12, and the VIX is higher by 1%. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, Cisco, 3M, and J&J, while Caterpillar fell 1.8% and led to the downside. After earnings, ConAgra soared 17%, while Darden fell 5%. And in other news, Tesla broke above $400 per share to a record, and Live Nation soared 9% intraday after reaching a settlement with the DOJ. Wrapping things up, Nike reports after the bell. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie.
Okay, we thank you very much, Bill Maloney, and to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg type squawk, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you very much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Masser along with Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
Well, magic is one word for what big financial firms do, and maybe they do it to maybe obscure some things that they don't want the world to see. Vernon Silver is Projects and Investigations reporter for Bloomberg. He joins us on the phone from Rome. His story is a must-read if you want to understand, especially what's gone on since the financial crisis. Wall Street magic tricks make banks look safer than they are. Vernon, great to have you with us.
Hey.
All right. So I love this story because you break it down into several sections that really are a bit of a roadmap to how banks are behaving, maybe not so clearly. Talk to me about the thing that jumped out to you the most of these.
It's just that these tricks that they can do have only changed in small bits since the crisis, which itself was built on obscuring the true health of banks through little tricks, and that the tricks that are being employed, whether they're legal, in a gray area, or just being discovered now by regulators in the U.S. and in Europe, really have to deal with the most fundamental things about a bank's stability. Their capital, their liquidity, in other words, their ability to pay the bills if things go wrong, and to cover up trading losses. In other words, obscuring the ability of investors, unless they really dig, or regulators, unless they really understand what's going on, to gauge whether banks are going to face another crisis.
Well, and it's interesting, too. I mean, walk us through some of the other, you talk about losing leverage, risk hiding, capital relief, in terms of how you break down this story. What is it that you think investors need to be so aware of when it comes to what's going on at some of these firms?
I mean, one of them is that there can be multiple measures in one earnings report of what a bank's health is. That there's discretion, when it comes to capital, of describing, how big or small the bank is. Smaller a bank can seem by saying, at this risk over here, this capital, we'll only take 50% of those securities over there and count them. We'll decide that none of these bonds, even if they're from Greece or Italy, should really count at all. Legally, they can do that. But some of the trickier stuff, there's one we found where the European central bank regulators found that almost a dozen big banks across Europe, every 30 days at the same exact time, saw a certain measure of their ability to confront a crisis, their liquidity ratio, drop off the cliff. They euphemistically at the ECB called it a optimization tactic that was happening, and they are, as we speak, are investigating why and how exactly these banks are doing it. Because if you look at the end of that month, they were fine. If you look a day before or a day after, their financial picture of these big European banks is much different.
So, Vernon, I got to think a lot of people reading this, maybe they're not surprised that banks are trying to get away with something, but might be a little bit surprised because post-financial crisis, there was a lot of legislation, a lot more regulation. What didn't regulators or lawmakers do, or how are they getting worked around?
I mean, the main thing they didn't do is change the incentives. Like there's still quarterly earnings. Bonuses are still based on how well your unit did, whether it's your trading desk or the incentives haven't changed, and that hasn't changed the nature of wanting to do everything you can to look as good as you can. And the other crucial thing is it's been a little over a decade now since the crisis. Some call it a complacency that's sunk in, and some, the banks are arguing to roll back some of these regulations, and it's happening. And they have good arguments for it. It's like, do we need belts and suspenders? We understand, how it went wrong. Let us take our money and go invest it and build our business rather than making us sit on a war chest.
So Joel Weber, editor of Bloomberg Business Week, just swung in. What do you have to ask, Vernon? This was a great story.
Vernon's covered a lot of this from a lot of different angles through the years. And so, Vernon, the thing I just wanted to ask you was, what was the most revelatory thing that you learned from working on this?
It was that, we've been following this case in Italy that involves some of the biggest banks, Deutsche Bank, Nomura and Montepaschi, the world's oldest bank. Been covering this thing for years and years, and it wasn't until last month when these guys, 13 of them, bankers, senior executives, got convicted in the Milan court, and we realized sort of the size and scope of that moment was this was the first convictions of top executives from major global banks ever since the crisis. That literally did not happen until last month, and this was for covering up $800 million in losses that they just made poof go away one week.
And of course, that cover-up was the crime in this
right.
case.
No, it's really interesting.
Right, exactly. The cover-up was the crime.
Yeah. All right. We're going to leave it there. Vernon Silver, Projects and Investigations reporter for Bloomberg. He joined us on the phone from Rome. His story, Wall Street magic tricks make banks look safer than they are. A really important story, I feel like, especially coming to the end of a year where everybody did great, stocks are up, everything's healthy in the financial system. Maybe not so much. Maybe they may just be hiding some things.
Yeah, exactly. Our thanks to Joel Weber as well, editor of Bloomberg Business Week in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. Coming up, we'll check in on the chart of the day with none other than our Bloomberg Stocks editor, Dave Wilson. And then it was the most read story on the Bloomberg, so we'll see if it's still holding there. It has to do with
distressed
debt.
I love it.
All right, that's coming up next right here on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks remain higher in the final hour, with the major averages on track to close at new highs. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 113, the S&P 500 up 11, the Nasdaq Composite is up 49. Live Nation has reached a settlement with the government over allegations that it strong-armed concert venues into using its Ticketmaster subsidiary. The company agreed to extend a 2009 consent decree under which it was allowed to buy Ticketmaster. The Federal Trade Commission is moving to block the acquisition of Treehouse Foods by Post Holdings. The agency says the $110 million deal will lead to higher prices for private labeled breakfast cereals. Carryout pizza chain Little Caesars is looking overseas for growth. It plans to open hundreds of stores next year in countries from the UK to India as its U.S. store growth stagnates. The new restaurants will be operated by franchisees. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance?
Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business Radio.com and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Are you in? Christmas is almost here, and at Asda, we've got your favourite spirits for just £16 each. That's £16 for a 1 litre bottle of Smirnoff vodka or Gordon's gin, or a 70 centilitre bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey. Looks like you're hosting this year. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability. Exclude Scotland. Drink aware.
Far wing elevates. Triple bucket.
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut
the
it.
Sideline, the Van Fleet for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Pump fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA today to start listening.
MSNBC is on TuneIn. Get up-to-the-minute coverage on news and events from around the world with MSNBC's live 24/7 station on TuneIn. At home or on the go, stay up to date on the latest news and political trends with MSNBC's full lineup of shows, including Hardball with Chris Matthews.
Hi, I'm Chris Matthews. Thanks for listening to MSNBC on TuneIn.
And The Rachel Maddow Show. Plus, when news breaks, MSNBC has you covered with live updates, expert analysis, and more. Search MSNBC on TuneIn today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Along the goal line, Martin scores and takes it home.
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, faced off.
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Do you have a favorite true crime podcast this year? Here's a few of ours. On the latest season of Uncover, journalist Michelle Shepard investigates the unsolved case of a missing Toronto teen that has haunted her for 20
Toronto
years.
Police are continuing a desperate search for a missing...
And on Haunting Warhead, host Damon Fairless exposes the darkest, most shocking corners of the internet and the criminals who lurk in the shadows.
How do you take down a criminal network hidden in the shadows?
Search True Crime on TuneIn to discover these and more life thrillers.
Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, coming up on the program, we're going to bring you one of the most read stories of the day. It's about distressed debt. I tell you, put bonuses in a headline, and suddenly people are like, what?
I know.
I need to know about this.
I love this. So we're going to get into this in just a moment. Let's get back, though, to your top business stories. Let's see what's going on. We've got about 29 minutes to go, Charlie Pelley.
And indeed, Carol Master, we are also off our session highs, but an update nonetheless, on track for a record close for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. Investors chasing gains that have added more than $5 trillion to valuations this year. Oil, by the way, topping $61 a barrel. Treasuries edging higher. We've got the 10-year up 230 seconds. Yield now 1.90%. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.5%, up 29 cents a barrel, 61.22. Brent 66.47, up today by just about 0.5%. So here's where the equity market stands. S&P up 11, above 3,200, 3202, up 0.3%. The Dow also higher now, up 105 points. That's a gain of just about 0.4%. And NASDAQ pushing higher as well. The NASDAQ Composite Index up right now by 0.5%. The index of leading economic indicators is flashing a warning. And with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
What the future holds, no one knows. However, the LEI, a divining rod on economic growth 3 to 6 months out, was flat in November, the fourth month without an increase. Manufacturing wrapping up a horrible year plagued by White House trade policy and slowing global growth has weighed on the index for months. Ditto business investment. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
Apple has reportedly been exploring opportunities to strengthen its upstart TV service, including deals for James Bond franchise owner MGM Holdings and college sports rights. This, according to Dow Jones, citing people familiar with the matter. Darden Restaurants down the most in 3 months after reporting quarterly sales at Olive Garden that trailed analyst estimates. Darden shares down now by 5.8%. After the bell, we will be hearing from Nike, and Nike shares up right now by 0.2%. Gold higher, 0.3%, up 14.79 the ounce. So again, recapping equities at records, S&P up 11, a gain of 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week.
Love me some Prince.
We're going to party like it's 1999?
That's the Y2K year.
Ah, I like it.
Remember?
Among other things.
Yeah. Oh, right.
You know, I mean, 1999, we were really close to the peak of a bull market driven by the development of the internet. And, you know, if you look at the S&P 500, the companies that carry the most weight in the index, they're getting to be a bigger and bigger share of the S&P 500's value. You know, I was inspired by Jim Bianco over at Bianco Research. He had a chart actually going back decades that looked at, you know, at the end of each year, the 5 most valuable companies in the S&P 500, you know, what was their weighting all put together. So I did that with the 5 companies that are most heavily weighted, which are not necessarily the same because not all the shares that a company issues necessarily go into the calculations of the S&P 500. But in any case, right, you're looking at 1/6 of the value of the index right now coming down to 5 companies. And that's Alphabet, the owner of Google. They have 2 classes of shares in the S&P 500. I count them both. Then Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Microsoft. When you put them all together, 16.6% of the index's value was in those 5 companies alone. If you were to go back to 2014, let's say, and look at what the 5 most heavily weighted companies were then, you're talking more like 11%. And it's been going up. And you're now at the highest percentage since, you guessed it, 1999, when it was 16.7%.
So Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook?
And, yeah.
Right?
Right.
Wow. That's interesting. So that, you know, you need to think about when you're buying the index, you're not necessarily very diversified.
Right. That's as much the point as anything. If you want to know more, you want to see the chart, which goes back to 1999, conveniently enough, send me an email. I'll get it to you along with the explanation that goes with it and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Well, let's move to one of our most read stories of the day. Allison McNeely, wrote it. Sorry, Allison.
Too much eggnog, apparently, at lunch.
The distressed debt trades that gutted bonuses this year. She's with Carol Massar and myself, the feisty Carol Massar and myself here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Congrats on this story. This is really interesting because you go through some of the deals that, candidly, to use a technical term, just blew up.
Absolutely, yeah. It was... It's kind of funny, as a distressed debt reporter, like half of my job is just wondering when the recession is going to hit. And it's not here yet.
Hence the gray cloud you walk into the studio over your head.
Doom and gloom squad, yeah. But what we really saw in distressed debt this year is, as the article said, it was all about very name-specific situations, like very idiosyncratic problems that were very company to company specific. And so when these events occurred, it was really, really sudden and really dramatic.
Well, I feel like on steroids, that is definitely the case of PG&E.
Yeah. Prime example. And it's a situation that's constantly changing. Like we saw news coming out, I believe it was yesterday, about the approval of the settlements in court. And, you know, now we're waiting to see what will happen with California and with the governor. And that's a situation that's constantly changing. But when they filed for bankruptcy back in January, it really, really took people by surprise because, you know, people weren't expecting it.
No. And so Intelsat is another name that you write about, and that's one where you had the FCC involved and all of this sort of private, public dancing around each other. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, so Intelsat was probably the most popular sort of recovery bet in 2018. A lot of hedge funds investors piled into that name, thinking that the FCC would let them go with a plan to sell this satellite spectrum that would allow them to get a bunch of money to pay down debt.
To do a private auction, to basically handle it themselves, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So that there would be a very sort of friendly to the private company's procedure. We've since learned that they're going to go with a public auction, and we don't really know what that is going to look like. We don't know how much Intelsat and its C-band partners are going to get in proceeds. So now all of a sudden, this whole recovery trade that was predicated on being able to pay down some of their debt is completely hanging, there's a big question mark over it.
I feel like the vulture investors or whatever, the folks just waiting kind of to buy everything really, really cheaply, right? At some point. That's maybe the trade of 2020.
That's kind of what these guys do, right? Is they come into these very specific situations, they try and make a bet on how it's going to go to make money. And the challenging part about Intelsat in particular is, you're really just waiting for the government to make a decision. Like, there's not really much you can do to kind of play that situation as a hedge fund.
Right. Yeah, it's a really, really nice piece of reporting. Allison McNeely wrote it with Kat Doherty, also a friend of this show, the distressed debt trades that gutted bonuses this year.
Your second most read story in the past 8 hours on the Bloomberg terminal. I'll put that out on Twitter. Coming up, we're going to take you down to the closing bell right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Let's get down to D.C. first. Martin DeCaro is there with World and National Headlines. Hey, Martin.
Hello, Jason. Republican lawmakers appear entirely united around President Trump after his impeachment, but today some are asking him to apologize for insulting Michigan Congresswoman Debbie Dingell and her late husband John, who served 59 years in Congress. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham isn't laughing at Trump's comments.
I knew John Dingell, and to suggest, even in joking manner, that would be wrong. That is out of bounds.
At his campaign rally in Michigan last night, Trump suggested the deceased lawmaker was looking up from hell at his wife, who voted to impeach him just hours earlier. When it comes to impeachment, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she won't send the articles charging Trump with abuse of power and obstruction of Congress to the Senate until Majority Leader Mitch McConnell negotiates a trial process. Short time ago, Trump announced New Jersey Democrat Jeff Van Drew, just one of 3 in his party to vote against impeachment, is becoming a Republican. Longtime Trump confidant Roger Stone is asking a federal judge to postpone his sentencing set for early February until at least March. He says he needs more time to collect records. A federal jury convicted Stone on 7 felony counts for his efforts to learn about hacked Democratic emails during the 2016 campaign. In India, thousands are defying a ban on public protests. They're risking arrest so they can vent against a citizenship law brought by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Hindu nationalist government. Unrest has roiled India for 8 days, protesting a law that denies citizenship to Muslim migrants from neighboring countries. Global news 24 hours a day on air, and a quick take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Martin DeCaro.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to
19p. What will that get you at Christmas? 5 minutes at a panto, a very unpopular Secret Santa. This week at Tesco, you can get sprouts, carrots, or parsnips from just 19p. Our festive 3. That should get you on the nice list. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Selected stores excludes Express, ends 26th of December.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
With 2020 on the horizon, TuneIn continues looking back at the stories that shaped the 2010s.
In 2011, Osama bin Laden is captured and killed by U.S. Special Forces after a decade-long manhunt. In 2016, Donald Trump is elected the 45th President of the United States after securing 304 electoral votes over Hillary Clinton's 227. And in 2018, a UN report stating the world has 12 years to prevent irreversible climate change.
Search news on TuneIn to be listening when the next decade's big headlines break.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade.
That's why I need a one dance.
The 2010s was the decade of the surprise album drop, where artists from Beyonce, Drake, and Frank Ocean to Radiohead, U2, and the late David Bowie skipped the traditional promotion cycle to bring their music directly to fans with little to no warning. Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Slam dunk!
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium. Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. 4 of the league's top teams are in action as the Lakers take on the Bucks at 8 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Rockets taking on the Clippers at 10:30 p.m. Eastern.
11-2.
Today, the Lakers are at the Bucks at 8 p.m. Eastern, and the Rockets are at the Clippers, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
A new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen and favorite ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Got 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, they are all moving higher, on track for records. Big question, S&P, will it close above or below 3,200 for the first time? We've got the S&P at 3,202 right now. That's a gain of just about 10 points, higher by 0.3%. The Dow up 103 points, up 0.4, and NASDAQ higher by 51. That is a gain of 0.6%. 10-year 230 seconds yield 1.90%. Gold also advancing up 0.3%, 14.79 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude oil up 0.5%, 61.22 a barrel. So again, recapping, stocks higher. Nike after the bell, by the way. Nike shares are moving higher. S&P up now by 10, a gain of 0.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home? Honey, please, I'll do the driving. Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
It's time for the Drive to the Close. We do it every day around this time. Alan Zaffron back with us, founding partner and co-CEO of IEQ Capital. He joins us on the phone from Foster City, California. Alan, great to have you back with us.
Jason, great to be on again. Thank you.
All right. So, Alan, Carol and I had a little bit of a moment earlier in the program where we had a little bit of a back and forth about what the rest of the year may bring. It feels pretty good. Equities obviously at a record here in the U.S., but last year still sort of lingers in some of our minds. That turbulence that we experienced doesn't feel like it's going to happen, but is there anything that worries you as we get to the end of 2019?
I'm always worried, but as a practical matter, no. You've got impeachment in front of you. You've got all kinds of geopolitical concerns. The Hong Kong situation is unsettled. It's not clear exactly what's going to happen with Brexit, and the market just goes up anyway. And so, in an environment where you can't even find candidates for tax loss harvesting, it's pretty hard to find motivations for sales, and you're going to see year-end window dressing portfolio managers trying to buy things that are already up to make it look like that's what they held all year when they take a one-time snapshot at the end of the year. It's going to take a lot that neither you or I could predict in the next couple weeks to stop this market from continuing upward, at least through year-end.
All right. So at least through year end. Okay. And that's pretty short term, obviously. What does 2020 hold? Because I do wonder, with it being an election year, we've had a lot of talk around this table that once the Fed sets its policy, probably by spring, they're not going to play around too much because it is an election year. So what does that necessarily mean?
Okay. I'm going to separate that into two pieces. I'm going to start with the economy and then tell you what I think it means for financial markets. The economy is set to do terrific in 2020. You had the Fed cut rates 3 times in the summer and early fall. Academics will tell you that the biggest impact economically from rate cuts shows up 12 months forward. So, conveniently, the economy is probably going to be peaking from the impact from the rate cuts right around the September, October timeframe. Also, to the extent we're making nice with China and finding some political solution that eliminates uncertainty, executives can start making business decisions, and with the delayed effect, some of that impact will show up in the third quarter next year. The economy is in pretty darn good shape. What does that mean for the markets? Of course, there's always going to be elevated political uncertainty. However, to the event that there's a sense that the economy is moving at a reasonable pace but not too aggressively, as long as interest rates don't go up too dramatically, you're still in this really ideal environment to be a stockholder. Revenues are growing, but my costs, my labor costs, my input costs are not going up a lot. Inflation is not a problem yet. And in this environment, that's a wonderful place to own stocks. So the die is cast for a positive year next year, which if it weren't for the uncertainty of a political election, you might be surprised how much stocks might even go up next year. So I would tell you, we here, if anything, are leaning on the bullish side, given the strong economic backdrop from which the year begins.
So, Alan, it's interesting. I was just reading a story which I wanted to ask you about because you're so familiar with sort of all the technology sort of corridors of our country, joining us there from Foster City. You know that area so well. I think about the past year where a lot of the wealth that we expected to materialize from all these big IPOs either didn't materialize, the wealth didn't, or the IPOs didn't happen. And yet, sort of the private market keeps sort of chugging along. Do you foresee that continuing? Do you still see all that money, that alternative money, going into, tech companies and companies in sort of a fast growth trajectory?
I absolutely do. There's no shortage of optimism here in California, particularly in the Bay Area, with respect to finding the next unicorn. I will say this, though. It's been a wake-up call this year, not just the debacle at WeWork, but even the disappointment from the Uber IPO. And if you actually look at a significant number of small and mid-sized software companies that came out screaming and the prices have fallen materially, we can rattle them off, the Zooms and the Slacks of the world. The marketplace is being more discerning with respect to really funding cash-burning entities, and I would assert that's actually a positive. It makes you realize the system, to a degree, is working. The public markets in particular are effectively saying, we're not going to finance you indefinitely. This is why Uber, as an example, is starting to back away from the cash-burning businesses. It's time to realize that public stockholders are going to hold these companies ultimately accountable and stop the cash burn. So money is absolutely chasing the next unicorn, but valuations are starting to recognize that there needs to be sanity from the point of management of ultimately driving cash returning back to shareholders.
So it's interesting. Peter Core has a great story in Bloomberg Business Week this week that takes, specifically a look at bubbles. Jason and I talked to him earlier this week, and it'll be in our weekend show. But there's a quote from Michael Hartnett. He's a chief equity strategist over at BofA Global Research. He said, quote, "We enter the next decade with interest rates at 5,000-year lows, the largest asset bubble in history, a planet that is heating up, and a deflationary profile of debt disruption and demographics." And I do wonder, is everybody just chasing with, especially with, not a lot of active management. It feels like much more passive management. Is everybody getting a little bit lazy here?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, that gentleman won't be running for president on that platform.
Yeah, right.
I don't want to call it laziness. I want to tell you that we have unfortunately become conditioned into an environment where when there's a problem, central bankers show up and throw more money into the system, which keeps rates low, which keeps investors' willingness to throw money into yielding assets like stocks, like real estate, keeps the prices elevated. So
should rates be higher here?
Ourselves.
Do you think rates should be higher here?
No, one of the reasons I'm reasonably optimistic or bullish is I think for a variety of reasons like aging populations, rates of economic growth are slower, and rates will be here for quite a long while. And the shocking part, if you really believe that to be true, if I pay 20 times earnings, my 20 times PE on the stock market, that's like saying I put $100 into a stock, I get $5 back. That's 5% back on my stock. 5% is 3% more than a 2% 10-year treasury.
Right.
Yeah.
You go back over the last 60 years, that average is only 0.5%. We could trade at 25 times earnings. So
right.
No, I don't think rates are going up anytime soon.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Great to catch up with you. Alan Zaffron, always so thoughtful, founding partner and co-CEO of IEQ Capital, on the phone from Foster City, California.
All right, coming up, we'll take you down to the closing bell, take a look at some of the movers and shakers on Wall Street. We've got a little bit of earnings coming our way after the close from Nike. You're listening to Bloomberg Radio.
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
It's Lidl's Pick of the Week. This week we're big on Christmas veggies, with Brussels sprouts, carrots, red cabbage, parsnips and shallots from just 15p from Thursday the 19th of December. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes NI.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade. The 2010s saw yet another revolution in the way we listen to music. With music fans giving up CDs and digital downloads for streaming services and internet radio like TuneIn. At the same time, vinyl sales continue to rise to levels not seen since the format's original decline. Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen and favorite ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slammed it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
What better way to celebrate the holidays than with a subscription to TuneIn Premium? With a bottomless library of the world's best audio, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Search Premium to upgrade today.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A move higher for the Dow, the S&P and NASDAQ. Record close. S&P closing at the best level of the day, up 14 at 32.05, a gain of 0.4%. Folks from Pebblebrook Hotel Trust ringing that closing bell on this Thursday, December 19th. The Dow up 136 points at the close, up 0.5%, 28,375 on the Dow. NASDAQ up 59. That was a gain there of just about 0.7%. 10-year up 132nd with a yield of 1.91%. So stocks claiming new records as investors chase gains that have added more than $5 trillion to valuations this year. And again, the S&P 500 index pushing past and closing above 3,200 for the first time, led by technology, consumer, and communication shares. Now, what about 2020 and what to expect in the new trading year? Alan Zaffron is founding partner and co-CEO at IEQ Capital. He was our guest moments ago right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
As long as interest rates don't go up too dramatically, you're still in this really ideal environment to be a stockholder. Revenues are growing, but my costs, my labor costs, my input costs are not going up a lot. Inflation is not a problem yet. And in this environment, that's a wonderful place to own stocks.
TiVo, the inventor of the digital video recorder and technology licensor, Xperi Corp, agreed to merge in an all-stock transaction that gives the combined company an equity stake of $2.4 billion. TiVo up today by 6.1%. Shares of Xperi Corp lower by 11%. ConAgra brand shares surging today after this morning's earnings report. ConAgra up by 15.8%. Darden, after earnings, dropping today. Darden down by 6.2%. Gold up 0.3%. Again, recapping stocks closing at records. S&P up 14, up 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Wild thing, think you move me.
I got a few moves I know you'll like.
Shake it, blue thing, yeah, yeah.
Vodka martini, shaken, not stirred.
Just move on. Toward your destination.
I can make things move
entertainment.
Shaking all over.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
It is time to take a look at some of the movers and shakers on this Thursday. Carol Masser along with Jason Kelly in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. We are awaiting earnings from Nike. As soon as they cross the Bloomberg terminal, we'll break them for you. In the meantime, so what happened? We talked about records again on Wall Street. As for the S&P 500, again, much more of a bullish tone here in the market. 326 names in the index higher today, 175 lower, 4 unchanged. And we did see an uptick in stocks just in the last few minutes of trading. So we really did finish at our highs of the day. In terms of the sectors overall, Jason, every major industry group in the S&P 500 gained except for utilities and energy at the bottom of the pack, lost a little bit. Industrials, too, were flat on the day, but real estate, communication services, and information technology, you know, some of the big movers of the year, they definitely gained big time. Those are your top performers.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, those are in a market that's going up really fast and everybody's really excited, you know. Utilities is usually like, won't.
It's like your safe play, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you don't want to feel safe. Risk on, baby.
Risk on. What are you watching?
You know, I was looking at Live Nation. I saw some headlines go past earlier. Settling U.S. claims against Ticketmaster. I believe that was over ticket pricing and some price fixing. Mm-hmm. Trying to protect competition really is ultimately what it came down to. And that stock ended up 9.16% today. Again, Live Nation settling U.S. claims against the Ticketmaster unit, extending the terms of the deal to 2025. So investors happy about that. I mean, the live entertainment business overall is a booming one, and so people want to invest in it, but this was a real overhang for that stock.
So what were we got the earnings last night? Was it Micron? It was Micron Technology.
Micron, Moo.
Yeah, Moo. So that stock at its highs of the day were up about 4.25%. They settled a little bit below, below that, but still with a gain of 2.8% on the day, $54.53 a share. So for the year overall, Micron Technology is up nearly 72%. So quite a move up. I'm just going to take a look at what the stocks did today. Again, in another bullish day overall, the stocks, it was just up about 0.8%. So certainly Micron outpacing, it looks like, the overall trade when it comes to the semi names.
Also looking on the other side of the ledger, and Charlie Pellet mentioned this name earlier, I believe Darden. Shares getting crushed. Olive Garden. Remember we talked about the Olive Garden?
Olive Garden.
Times Square.
All the salad you can eat.
The other day. Unlimited breadsticks. Yeah, well, apparently not selling. Maybe they're selling too many breadsticks. I don't think that's the issue. That stock, the Olive Garden, really dragging down Darden. Let me get you a percentage there. The stock was down about 6.3% on earnings that disappointed Darden because of the Olive Garden.
We caught up with the head of Macy's at the Year Ahead Summit here at Bloomberg. Well, Macy's is your number 4 decliner in the S&P 500, down 2.7% today. Morgan Stanley coming out and saying that Macy's is most at-risk retailer from credit change, saying the current expected credit loss, a new accounting rule for loan loss reserves that goes into effect on January 1, is, quote, not on the retail investors' radar, according to Morgan Stanley analysts who believe the impact to department stores, especially Macy's, is more material than the market realizes. And I think Morgan also cut their price target on Macy's to $13 a share from $14 a share. So, want. Macy's, what is it doing for the year? It is down 46%.
Would you say they need a miracle on 34th Street?
Boy, I would say so.
See what I did there?
Nice.
All right, let's take a look at volatility. The VIX closing down just shy of 1%, closing at 12.46. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson!
Dave Wilson back with us in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio with his stock of the day. Dave?
Herman Miller.
Hey.
It's an office furniture maker that began in 1905 as Star Furniture. The name changed in 1923 after the father-in-law of the company's president bought a majority stake. And you know what his name was?
Herman Miller.
That's the father-in-law. You got it.
Can you imagine, like, being the guy who's like, all right, father-in-law. I'll change it. I'll take your money and change it to your name.
Yeah,
cool.
Absolutely.
They must have a fun holiday season, those holiday dinners together.
Awkward Christmas.
In any case, the company's shares have been publicly traded since 1970. The ticker is MLHR. The shares have climbed as much as sixfold from a March 2009 low. They rose to a record yesterday in response to well-received quarterly results from a rival, Steelcase. Now, Herman Miller's fiscal second quarter report came out late yesterday, and it didn't go over so well. Sales trailed the average analyst estimate in a Bloomberg survey by the most in 9.5 years. The company said the shortfall reflected a 4% drop in orders. While Herman Miller's earnings last quarter beat projections, the company's profit forecast for this quarter came up short. The results and outlook caused Herman Miller's shares to give back yesterday's gains and then some. They fell 13.6%. That was the biggest drop since March of last year.
Stock's up 42%. So I feel like anything that's had such a run, it's, I don't know about the valuation, it's almost 13 forward-looking, PE. But I do wonder, right? Any disappointment, you're going to see the stock being taken down.
There's certainly that potential. And like I say, yesterday was a record.
Yeah.
So that goes to show you something. And just to put it in a little bit of context real fast.
Yeah.
It got up to 49.87 and change today, closing at 42.97.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining that. Sorry, I'm just imagining that dinner conversation where the wife comes home and is like, "Hey, great news! My dad wants to invest in the company. Here's the catch: you've got to name it after him."
What?
Oh, but it turned out well for everyone.
Yeah.
Great stock of the
Just
day.
not today.
Especially
just
Herman
not
Miller.
today. Especially Herman Miller, exactly. Yesterday, great. Today, not so good.
All right, Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Our Bloomberg Stocks columnist, Dave Wilson.
All right, let's get down to D.C. now. Martin DeCaro is there with World National Headlines. Hey, Martin.
Okay, Kelly and Masser. The House impeached President Trump, but isn't done with the process yet. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is delaying sending the 2 articles of impeachment to the Senate, where Trump's trial must begin, until Majority Leader Mitch McConnell agrees to what she calls a fair process.
Our founders, when they wrote the Constitution, they suspected that there could be a rogue president. I don't think they suspected that we could have a rogue president and a rogue leader in the Senate at the same time.
McConnell took to the Senate floor to attack the way Democrats conducted the 3rd presidential impeachment in U.S. history.
There's only one outcome that is suited to the paucity of evidence: the failed inquiry, the slapdash case.
McConnell remains opposed to allowing Democrats call witnesses with direct knowledge of the president's conduct toward Ukraine. Russian leader Vladimir Putin, at his annual news conference today, gave Trump a vote of confidence, saying the charges against him are far-fetched. Other business is getting done on Capitol Hill. The House is expected to approve the new North American Trade Pact, the USMCA, today. The Senate's on the way toward passing a $1.4 trillion spending bill the president intends to sign to keep the government funded. Government researchers tested the algorithms of nearly 100 companies on millions of mugshots, visa application photos, and other images. They found that facial recognition technology often performs unevenly based on a person's race, gender, or age. It's the first time the National Institute of Standards and Technology investigated demographic differences in face scanning algorithms. Global news 24 hours a day on air in a quick take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Martin DeCaro. This is Bloomberg.
You can't be the only one who spends time examining angles,
This sort of mini deal, what would it look like?
considering possibilities,
From a credit perspective, this is good news.
planning for eventualities.
This company really has to get back on a growth track.
You're right. The others are here.
General Electric is such an interesting story.
Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney. Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Welcome back to the Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch snuggling, ball chasing, face licking, and of course companionship. Now let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive. And now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
The happy dance will come in with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. A Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba,
Please be done.
over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
19p? What will that get you at Christmas? 5 minutes at a panto, a very unpopular Secret Santa. This week at Tesco, you can get sprouts, carrots, or parsnips from just 19p. Our festive 3. That should get you on the nice list. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Selected stores excludes Express, ends 26th of December.
Back to throw, fires right on the slant. Caught, touchdown. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown.
This Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the lights shine bright on the Las Vegas Bowl. Washington Huskies head coach Chris Peterson will coach his final game before retiring as he takes on his former school, the Boise State Broncos.
Down to the 5, he leaps for the end zone, and he is in.
To listen to this and every bowl game, just search college football today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Along the goal line, scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
Thank you for an amazing 2019.
What a year.
We brought you every major sports game live and on demand.
Touchdown! Got it! And it's gone! Score!
Top stories, commercial-free from the voices you trust.
What was already an important week just got that much more interesting.
And the biggest hits from rock, country, pop, and everything in between.
Baby, how you feeling?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you!
Thank you for choosing TuneIn.
Cheers to 2020.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
What was your favorite podcast of 2019? Well, here's ours.
This is the Open Ears Project, a new daily podcast in which people tell us a story about the piece of classical music that means the most to them.
Part mixtape, part sonic love letter. The Open Ears Project is where people share a classical track that gives a glimpse into their lives and allows us to hear the music and each other differently. Brought to life things that I couldn't really put into words. Search Open Ears Project on TuneIn to check it out.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Number of developing after the bell stories. First of all, we begin with Nike's second quarter EPS, 70 cents. Estimates there, 58 cents. Revenue beats estimates, but Nike shares, they are trading lower. Right now, we have got Nike shares down now by just about 2.5%. Some of the other headlines to pass along. The House does have the votes to approve the U.S. Mexico-Canada trade deal, and Democrats from high-tax states scored a symbolic victory today as the House voted to repeal a politically fraught portion of President Trump's tax law. That is the cap on state and local taxes or SALT deductions. Again, stocks at a record. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all moving higher. S&P up 14, up 0.5. The Dow up 137, up 0.5%. NASDAQ up 59. That was a gain of 0.7%. 10-year yield 1.91%. Gold up 0.2%. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much for that update. Very busy all of a sudden after the closing bell. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, you heard Charlie break down the numbers for Nike. A beat on the top line, a beat on the bottom line. Gross margin, maybe missing estimates by a smidge. The shares are down a little over 2% here. Let's understand what may be happening. Poonam Goyal joins us, senior U.S. retail analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. She joins us on the phone from BI headquarters down in Princeton. All right, Poonam, I feel like this is a story we've seen a couple times now where some good numbers but disappointed investors. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I'd say the numbers were actually really strong across the board. The only areas which you highlighted was gross margin was up 20 basis points versus expectations of 25 basis points. And the one area that, I want to talk to management more about is on North American apparel, which was up just 1%. But outside of that, we saw double-digit gains across the board, across regions. I mean, innovation is really fueling top-line momentum there. And there's really no reason to be concerned in our view, with the shares trading down. I mean, the shares are up from, I believe it was, $65 at the start of the year. So the fundamentals for this company remain strong in our view. Yeah,
Poonam, the stock's up 36% so far this year, so it's had quite a run here. And I do wonder, I always think that, unless you kind of beat by a wide, margin, that maybe investors is a little disappointment considering the run-up and the expectations are so high on this one.
Yeah, I think the expectations are high, but the beat was actually pretty nice, 70 cents over 58 cents expectations. So it was a great earnings beat. The only two areas, once again, that I think are a little concerning, and we'll hear more on the call, is North America apparel sales, which were up just 1%. In the first quarter, they were up 2%. And then on the gross margins, they were up less than expected, but still driven by higher average selling prices, which goes to show you the strength of the brand and the innovation that they're bringing forward.
Poonam, remind us of the geographic breakdown in terms of what parts of the world are important, and in terms of their revenue breakdown.
Sure. So, the most, I'd say, they obviously operate globally. They have Greater China, which is an important business for them. And I tell you, if you were looking at Greater China, annual revenues there were about $4 billion last year. And it's pretty comparable. EMEA is about $6 billion. North America is about $9 billion. And Asia-Pac and LATAM is about $4 billion. So China, Asia-Pac, and LATAM, $8 billion together. North America, $9 billion, $5 billion in EMEA. You're looking at pretty much fair representation, but where the growth is, we think, where they're going to be driving the future is in China. And we think that's where a lot of the opportunity is, where they'll be growing north of 20% for the foreseeable future, and that is top line. And that's part of their 5-year plan to deliver continued innovation and top line momentum.
So, Poonam, how much of the investor skepticism may be owing to some broader skepticism about this category? A lot of what you're saying and a lot of the discussion we're having reminds me of the discussion we had about a week ago about Lululemon. It's sort of similar results, although they didn't beat, I think, quite as handily as Nike seems to. Does this tell us something about the broader market?
it just tells us that leisure continues to be not just a trend, but a way of life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think trends go up and down, right? But I think people in general across the globe are favoring the idea of just living well, and wellness plays a role into that. And when you think about wellness, you think about being comfortable, and also sport comes into play. And that's really what's driving all of this.
Yeah, I just think, increasingly I think about my purchases and stuff. I mean, these are the kinds of clothes I kind of want in my life at this point, and I just feel like increasingly that's where you're seeing growth in apparel. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, apparel and footwear. I mean, you see people walking on the streets now with sweatpants. They're not just going to the gym with them. They're wearing them in their day-to-day life.
Well, I was just thinking, Jason, I wasn't here, but on Friday you guys had the folks from Roan Apparel. And
Roan, yeah.
The pants that they've got, I forget what they call them, but they look like...
The commuter pants,
The commuter pants. It looks like a pair of pants you can wear to work, but they're really comfortable.
Well, right. And even the shirts, like they're getting into the dress shirt business, which are very much made with that sort of performance look about them. So what else do we need to see from the retailers, Poonam? Who else are you looking at, either from an earnings perspective or maybe from some holiday perspective?
I just want to mention the U.S. House approves Trump's USMCA trade deal, and they are now sending it off to the Senate. So the voting has been going on. But again, House approving that new NAFTA deal, if you will, trade deal, and now sending it on to the Senate. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Poonam.
So what else should we be looking at in the retail sector, especially as we get into holidays here, Poonam?
Sure. I mean, Nike's actually the last one to report in the group. Yeah. The rest of the news will come in the new year. And really, we'll be looking at holiday sales. A lot of retailers will announce what the sales were for the 2-month period, which will give you a good indication of how 4Q is trending. So far, what we've seen is Black Friday very strong, early November very strong, but the month as a whole not as strong as we would have expected. So really, the reliance is all on December to make up for the shortfall that we could have seen in November. And this is it. This is the last push that retailers have to make to get Christmas sales in, because we did have 6 fewer days in the holiday season. So anyone that needs a gift right now, either they're going to stores or they're paying for expedited shipping.
That's right. I'm in the expedited shipping category. Poonam Goyal, Senior U.S. Retail Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us on the phone from BI headquarters in Princeton, New Jersey. Always appreciate your insights, your instant insights with the numbers from Nike crossing, and just reiterating a beat on the top and the bottom line, but that stock now down a little less than 2%.
Yeah, definitely off its lows of the after-hours trade. So as you said, Jason, down about 1.7%. And the stock, as we did mention as well, has had quite a run this year. It is up 36%. Coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the world of hedge funds. That's coming up next on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks posted modest gains, sending the major averages to new highs. The Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed 138. The S&P 500 rose 14. The Nasdaq Composite jumped 59. A lack of inventory continues to limit home resales. The National Association of Realtors says sales fell to a 5-month low in November. Tight supplies are also pushing prices higher. The median sales price is up 5.4% from a year ago. The union for Southwest Airlines flight attendants is asking the carrier to delay hiring new workers until the 737 MAX returns to service. It says the MAX's grounding has taken a financial toll on its members. Southwest plans to resume classes for new hires next month. 8 years after buying Esurance, Allstate is preparing to phase out the brand next year. Instead, it will sell insurance online under its main brand in an effort to better compete with rivals Geico and Progressive. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but Miss Araceli, she gave me direction.
At age 47, Marco finished his high school diploma.
50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Thank you for an amazing 2019.
What a year.
We brought you every major sports game live and on demand.
Touchdown! Got it! And it's gone! Score!
Top stories, commercial free from the voices you trust.
What was already an important week just got that much more interesting.
And the biggest hits from rock, country, pop, and everything in between.
Baby, how you feeling?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you!
Thank you for choosing TuneIn.
Cheers to 2020.
Slam dunk! The NBA is on TuneIn Premium. Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. 4 of the league's top teams are in action as the Lakers take on the Bucks at 8 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Rockets taking on the Clippers at 10:30 p.m. Eastern.
11-2!
Today, the Lakers are at the Bucks at 8 p.m. Eastern, and the Rockets are at the Clippers, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations,
Live commercial-free news.
and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game.
Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen and favorite ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade.
That's why I need a one dance.
The 2010s was the decade of the surprise album drop, where artists from Beyonce, Drake, and Frank Ocean to Radiohead, U2, and the late David Bowie skipped the traditional promotion cycle to bring their music directly to fans with little to no warning. Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
It was 1970, and a pregnant Air Force captain found herself in a bind.
If you're pregnant, you cannot be active duty. If you have a child, you cannot be active duty.
So she sued. This week on The Media examines the case that almost set the course for women's reproductive rights. Instead, to Justice Ginsburg's dismay, we got Roe v. Wade. On this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Kansas.
Search NFL today.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Always interested in the world of alternatives. We've got a visitor to our studio who's going to be convening some people in Miami next month. That's a tough assignment, I think.
Somebody's got to do it. All right, anyway, we're going to talk about hedge funds in just a moment. Let's get back, though. A bunch of news after the closing bell, some trades, some earnings. Charlie Pellet's got it.
And that's what we do here at Bloomberg. Let's begin with Nike. Investors sent the shares to a record today in anticipation of a blowout earnings report. What they got was a disappointment despite results topping Wall Street estimates. Right now, we do have Nike shares after hours declining by about 2%. Nike did post profit of 70 cents a share, beating the 58-cent average of analyst estimates. Poonam Goyal is a Bloomberg Intelligence senior U.S. retail analyst. She was our guest moments ago right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
We saw double-digit gains across the board, across regions. I mean, innovation is really fueling top-line momentum there, and there's really no reason to be concerned in our view.
And again, we do have Nike shares now trading little changed after hours as we await the conference call. We've got Nike down now by just about 0.6%. Sources tell Bloomberg activist investor Engage Capital is weighing a bid to take nutritional supplement company Medifast private. Today we did see Medifast shares moving a little change today. We've got the Dow actually up by 0.5% on Medifast. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all climbing to records. S&P up 14, a gain there of 0.5%. First close above 3,200, 32.05. The Dow up 137, up 0.5%. NASDAQ up 59, a gain of 0.7. 10-year, the yield there 1.92%. Gold up 0.2%, 14.78 the ounce. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week here on Bloomberg Radio. All right, well, a bunch of folks getting together in Miami next month. We're actually going to be there for the Super Bowl right around this same time.
Summit.
Exactly. Ron Biscardi is here with us, co-founder and CEO of Context Summits. He's the convener of this group. They're going to be talking about hedge funds. What a year it's been for hedge funds. A couple years. Ron, first of all, welcome to our studio. Tell us what folks can expect when they join you down in sunny Miami.
Sure. Well, first, thank you, Jason and Carol, for having me. I appreciate the time to be here. So it has really become quite a gathering. We assemble a large base of institutional investors and a very large base of hedge funds as capital introduction events go, which is really what this is. This is the largest capital introduction conference in the world. We'll convene about 2,500 attendees. So you'll have roughly 600 to 700 institutional allocators and about the same number of hedge funds, and they will gather to do one-on-one meetings for 2 days following one day of our leadership summit, and they'll conduct about 11,000 meetings over that 2-day period.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like we've all seen the headlines about hedge fund fallout and hedge funds being, shut down. And I meant to check the numbers, but I mean, in terms of assets, continuing to grow, what are we seeing within the industry?
No, so for the last few years, hedge fund assets have dropped for sure.
Okay.
I want to say it's probably been about 10% shrinkage in total assets across the asset class. But I think what you're seeing is just kind of the natural evolution of this part of the economy. As in the early days, a lot of what hedge funds did, they were able to access data in a way that the rest of the world couldn't. And as data has become so much more available, as the internet has expanded over the last decade in particular, that edge has really eroded away. So now where kind of an average manager could put up great returns, you really need to be a world-class manager these days to put up good numbers and, more importantly, to generate alpha. And that's ultimately what investors are paying for.
Ron, what have you seen, because you are in that cap intro business, as they call it. What have you seen in terms of who wants to get sort of introed to the extent that, the base of investors, which obviously has diversified and gotten more sophisticated, it feels like, away from just pensions and endowments and sovereign funds. Family offices obviously much more interested. Have you seen that mix change?
So for sure, family offices are now a big part of this event, and I think of the base of investors into the asset class. Over the last several years, what we've really seen is the base of investors scrutinizing the marketplace in a way to make sure they're paying for alpha. Mm-hmm. And what they're finding is that emerging managers are generating a lot of alpha in comparison to some of the larger firms.
No kidding.
So I think you see investors targeting larger firms when they're trying to mitigate business risk. Obviously, when you invest in the largest funds in the world, they have an army of back office people to sort of protect the business. Right. And you don't have that same quality in smaller managers, but you do have managers that can take advantage of little niches in the marketplace in ways that are harder for the larger funds to do. So for the last several years in our allocator surveys, very consistently, there's probably about 60% are really more focused on emerging managers, and our event is really geared towards that audience. It's startup managers up through about $2 billion in assets.
What I'm wondering too, and I came across a survey, I think it was E&Y did it, and it was a global alternative fund survey, and they found that when it comes to alternatives, private equity has really put a lot of pressure on hedge funds. They're dominating. I think they grew to 25% of institutional investors' alternatives allocation this year from 18% last year. Hedge funds made up 33%, down from 40%. So I feel like investors, when it comes to the alternative space, right, they've got more and more options, and we know there's a ton of money out there in private equity.
That's absolutely true. And I can tell you about 4 years ago, we had a handful of private equity funds at this event. This year, we'll probably have 600 to 700 funds represented, and around 200 of them now will be either private credit or private equity.
No kidding.
So for sure, investors are absolutely looking for less liquid options because I think everyone sees that it's just easier to generate alpha, or at least identify the alpha being generated in these areas. And for sure, the returns have been terrific. So absolutely, there's a flood of money heading in that direction.
What do you think, just about 30 seconds left, what worries you the most about sort of, especially the hedge fund universe in 2020? What's the big threat?
I don't really worry much about it. I think the asset class is so large and so well established. I think what's happening is just natural. There probably are too many hedge funds in the world, and I think what we're going through is the natural process of construction and destruction of the players in this industry, and the cream is rising to the top, and that's good.
Well, it's very interesting to hear you say, especially about the emerging managers, because you do worry that maybe there's not as much fresh blood coming in, but that is a heartening statistic, to say the least. Ron Viscardi, co-founder and CEO of Context Summits. Check out their annual summit in Miami, January 29th and 30th at the Fontainebleau. Carol?
Great old hotel. Great old